Harold freezes at the edge, stunned by what just happened, his mind racing as he questions his fate, while the others stand nearby in stunned silence, staring right at him. A noble demands accountability after the chaos, while a woman drops to her knees and begs for forgiveness. The woman clutches Harold to her chest, firing off non-stop apologies until another servant storms in and snaps harshly, setting the whole room on a warpath. Harold clings to her, completely lost, and keeps thinking this whole thing feels like a messed-up game event, like the moment she tries to figure it out, everything keeps slipping forward. He blinks and remembers the game world, then it hits him hard. He's not a player anymore, he's Harold, stuck inside Brave Hearts. Brave Hearts dives into the action, showing off its combat mechanics, teasing real character interactions, and throwing in tons of features that keep the gameplay electric. Harold stares back on countless replays in his head, perfectly locked-in memories running on repeat, certain, absolutely certain, that nothing about the mess he's in right now can ever trip him up. Key players line up in front of him: Clara the servant, Jessica, his mother, and Hayden, the Stokes family's head. Then he snaps into doubt, questioning reality as everything spins, while in the background, a tense scene erupts when someone collapses. A flashback rips open Clara's fate, locking in the truth of what's about to happen, and Harold finally realizes he's right inside this heartbreaking tragedy. Jessica keeps a protective grip on Harold as his body stays rigid, and the moment something feels off, right as the story lurches toward a sudden, shocking incident. Harold's mother speaks to him softly, but he feels trouble coming. He snaps his hands up on instinct. Hayden lifts his weapon to strike Clara down, and he barrels right past every plea as Harold stands there, staring in horror at the spreading danger. Harold blurts out of nowhere, halting his father mid-sentence, while Clara drops to her knees in helpless shock. Then every eye snaps straight to Harold's sudden interruption. Harold strides forward with unnerving calm, demands execution rights, and swears he'll step in with magic, shocking everyone with the sudden turn. He spoke with chilling calm, pitching a different use for the woman to hide his real plan, still wearing that villain mask like it owned his face. Hayden nods along and has the woman hauled away, grinning at Harold's idea as guards rush in to carry out the order. Hayden tears into Clara with brutal insults, while Jessica backs Harold's plan, convinced she can put that to work for her own magical experiments. Harold stands there pretending he doesn't care while everyone else moves on with the decision, except his stomach is sinking with unease. All alone, Harold stares into the past and spots the cracks. This isn't the original story anymore, the timeline has shifted, and now his survival feels like a coin flip he can't stop fearing. Harold remembers his in-game role, the arrogant villain, and realizes the truth. Everyone around him fears and hates him. He remembers it all, his fate is sealed, the final boss is coming, and every second right now feels like a countdown to death. Harold stares at reality like it's a lie, yelling in his mind, "Why am I trapped as this character?" And it just won't click. A sharp knock slices through the moment, and he answers on instinct, then freezes as he realizes his body moved wrong, leaving him rattled and totally confused about what he just did. An AA servant named Norman steps in, and Harold instantly recognizes him, proving he's really inside the game world now. Norman steps up to Harold with respect, the man everyone in the Stokes family calls the Conscience. Normally, Norman freezes, sensing something off about Harold and grilling his condition, while Harold stays silent, smothering every hint of confusion. Harold fires back with total confidence, saying he's fine, while he hides what's really going on inside, and Norman stays stuck in doubt. Harold suddenly snaps into a harsher tone without meaning to, and that scares Norman because Harold's real intentions get twisted by the way he naturally speaks. Norman begs for leniency for Clara's punishment, and it blindsides Harold, because as everything unfolds, the story twists in ways nobody saw coming. Harold suddenly realizes he holds Clara's fate in his hands, flashes back to the words he never meant to say, and steels himself to move with perfect care, because one wrong step could spell catastrophe. He remembers how the original timeline ends. Clara dies, her daughter suffers, and the moment he realizes even one change could smash the future completely. Harold weighs the danger of messing with the story, terrified it'll unleash something worse. Then he snaps to the real priority, dodging death flags no matter what. He snaps into action, crafting a plan that keeps the main story moving while steering every moment toward a safer end. Harold interrogates Norman about Clara, wrestling inside his head, torn between saving her and keeping the original scenario balanced. Harold clashes with Norman, swearing his decision is right, but deep down fear gnaws at him, What if his move spikes the hate points way too far? Norman steps away politely once he's dismissed, while Harold snaps back with irritation, spitting out harsh words even as a softer side begs to show up inside. All alone, Harold crumpled onto the bed, realizing he'd yanked everything too fast. Now he had to stare down the consequences of messing with the timeline too soon. He even thinks about giving up, believing death could finally drag him back home, but he slams that thought away, terrified it'll be worse and cost him everything. Suddenly, something crashes nearby, jolting Harold out of his thoughts as the noise blares in, like trouble-s about to explode from nowhere again. The Herald flips through the books and odds and ends, spots familiar stuff from the game, and when the details match up, his confidence spikes, like, okay, I'm exactly where I need to be. He hunkers down and studies like his life depends on it, choosing to track the original story while dodging every mistake, all because he's hunting for clues that could help him survive. Harold readies himself to strike back, leaning on hard-earned knowledge to smash his death flags and reroute the doomed future that's been waiting for him. Harold storms into the dungeon, grills the guards about the prisoners, and realizes this whole mess is exactly what he expected. So he lays out a careful plan right inside. He orders the guards to stay outside, then snaps into action, incapacitating them fast so the room stays private. Harold swings the cell door open, snaps that everyone else wait outside, and decides to talk to the prisoner himself, alone. He strides through the pitch-dark corridor, closing in on the cell, and spots a lone figure sitting in stillness behind the bars. Harold locks eyes with the prisoner, confirms she's Clara, clocks the terror on her face, and gears up to take his next move. Harold corners Clara inside cell, questions her in a steady voice, and she squirms with nerves. He leans in, grilling her about her family, then his eyes widen when she mentions her daughter, Colette, locking in that crucial detail from the original story. Clara spills her past, loneliness, loss, everything she's been carrying, while Harold leans in like, wait, this is exactly what I remember from my own past. Harold digs up even more facts about his daughter, locks in her age and skills, and makes sure every detail lines up with the original timeline. After interrogating him, Harold walks away with a satisfied grin, sealing his plan, while Clara stays totally lost, staring at the pieces like they don't fit. Clara pleads with desperate urgency, terrified for her daughter's future, while Harold just sits there and listens. She pleads for mercy, sobbing for her child's life, while Harold stays stone calm. Harold fires back harshly, tearing into her fear, even while his heart wrestles with doubt, stuck with a warped way of speaking that won't let sympathy slip out. He turns his back and walks off, and Clara's confusion spikes as the dark corridor swallows the space between them after his icy response. Outside, Harold stews in his failure, realizing the very words he meant to use to help somehow sparked the misunderstanding. Harold spots Norman outside, sees the documents in his hands, and fires off questions, while Norman braces himself, ready to explain. Norman slams down maps and breaks down the settlements, then grills Harold's plan to save Clara like it's got holes you can't ignore. Harold gently proposes moving Clara beyond enemy territory, offering the answer with calm confidence, while Norman sits there, listening with full focus. Norman lays out the ugly costs, politics, backlash, the whole mess, but Harold waves it all off, zeroing in on one thing, getting Clara to a safer place. Harold jabs a finger at the exact village on the map, spots their destination, and plans the relocation with ruthless precision, using what he knows from the original story events. Harold quizzed everyone about travel rules, then his eyes lit up when he learned Clara could move freely, so he immediately plotted an explosive meetup between the key characters. He weighed permits, costs, and transport, realizing the move would demand ruthless planning and extra resources pulled from the territory. Norman watches Harold wrestle with his thoughts, and surprise hits him. He starts wondering about Clara's daughter, wondering if Harold's motives really match the noble script people expect. Harold dives into those documents with ruthless focus, while Norman finally realizes he's not just chasing a name, he's actually starting to care about people. Norman seethes in private, convinced Harold's brutal words aren't cruelty, they're armor meant to shield Clara. He steels himself to back Harold all the way, ready to jump in and help carry out the plan to save Clara. The Stokes family's ruthless beliefs finally get exposed, shocking proof of their discrimination and the exact reason Clara's situation spiraled into something this brutal from the start. Harold and Norman huddle over relocation plans, chasing the best mix of cost and safety, so they can find a place where Clara can finally live on her own. Norman starts trusting Harold with his whole heart, convinced he's the one who can reshape the Stokes family, and sees him as the only spark of hope for what comes next. The next day crashes in and Harold braces himself, ready to strike and move full speed with his plan. Harold reels off everything he knows about fire magic, realizes exactly how brutal it can be, and sets up to test his powers outside while keeping the flames on a tight leash. He hurls a spell and flames explode outward. He watches the fire surge into a devastating attack. Harold clocks it instantly. This attack hits harder than the game ever warned him, and when he matches it against his playbook, the real-world effects scream something off right away. Finally, he's buzzing with excitement over his new magic, but he reins it in, because knowing what's going on takes caution, even when curiosity is roaring. Harold maps everything out to make the outcome look effortless, all while setting the stage so Clara can break free later. Harold checks the fire results, nodding like the scene looks perfectly real. Then he gears up for the final steps, staying locked in that the outcome matches the expected incident conditions to the letter. He steels himself, locks eyes with the truth, Clara is real, and then decides right here tonight to move fast and make his plan work with zero room for failure. Harold kicks off his mission outside, scanning every corner like he's hunting danger while the rest hang back, waiting for his signal. Colette sprints toward Clara, bursting with excitement as she shouts for her mother, with guards and everyone else crowding nearby. Clara crushes Colette in a tight hug, bursting with relief that she's finally safe, while Harold stands off at a distance, watching like he can't breathe. Harold strides up and slams two choices into the moment, laying out exactly what each one costs, while Clara clutches her daughter to her chest and listens like her life depends on it. He orders them to get out of his territory, no coming back, and make sure they live, all while keeping the rules exactly lined up with his plan. Clara stalls, totally baffled by Harold's proposal, while he stays stone-cold firm, staring her down, daring her to answer. Harold barks out harsh demands, shoving her to decide in seconds, while Clara's fear spikes as she can't tell if he's really about to hurt her. Clara clenched her resolve, told them she wanted to live with her daughter, apologized through the panic, and chose the option that would keep her alive. Harold glides up to Colette with calm nerves, hands her an item, and the kid leans in, listening with full focus. He lays down the rules with steel in his voice, orders Colette to stash the items safely, and make sure their escape plan hits perfectly, while he stays fully in control. Harold cornered Colette and demanded she trust someone solid, because once she walked out of Stokes' territory for good, he wouldn't let her safety be a gamble. At last, he ordered the guards to gear up for departure as Clara calmed Colette, spelling out Harold's instructions to find someone who could keep her safe. Harold snaps out a strict warning, hammering home the consequences if the plan falls apart, then yells at them to leave right now and obey every instruction. No questions, no delays. Clara and Colette beam with gratitude as they gear up to leave, while Norman watches in silence, spotting just how cold and razor-focused Harold's behavior is. Once they're gone, Harold goes dead silent, buried in his own thoughts, while Norman stares him down, instantly sensing something off about the way Harold is moving and acting. Harold brushes Norman off with icy calm, barking that he return, while Norman snaps to obedience without a fight. Harold stares into the weight of their gratitude, doubts twist in his gut, and he finally realizes his good actions might not be as selfless or justified as he wants to believe. He relives that earlier incident, realizes his mistake sparked all the trouble, and a heavy dread settles in as he fears what's coming next. Harold decides this situation is good enough, convinced Clara and Colette can finally live in peace, so he pushes forward. Norman frets over Harold, but he keeps his distance, while Harold steels himself, ready to take on his next responsibility head-on. Norman jolts instantly, sensing danger creeping in. Harold speaks with steel in his voice about how life is priceless. He refuses to trade it away, while Norman can only watch, stunned. The Herald strikes instantly, unleashing crushing magic that blasts an explosion ahead, and with a roar, he declares the enemies finished. After the attack, Harold sinks into a quiet stare, realizing his words and moves slipped right back into the original character's patterns, like the loss of control came for him again. He strolls off in calm silence, minds racing over Clara's trouble, because Norman left earlier, and that twist saves him from any misunderstandings about the weird things he said. Norman blurts out an apology for sticking around, and Harold presses him on why he's still there, shocked that he never just walked out. Harold slams for silence, bullies Norman into obeying, and demands he erase every memory, no exceptions. Norman nods in silence, clocking Harold's every move and seeing the cracks in his confidence as Harold turns and storms away. Norman stares at Harold's moves and realizes what they really are. He's dodging conflict, spinning lies to keep himself safe, and living under this ruthless family expectation that will punish him for every misstep. He finally clocks it. Harold's been hurting in silence, trapped behind feelings he can't even say out loud, and the regret hits hard because he missed it sooner, wondering just how much pain Harold had to swallow all by himself. Norman clenched his resolve and finally chose to step in. He'd make things right and stop pretending he didn't see Harold's pain anymore. Harold clenched his resolve to keep himself safe, pushing on with his role while silently masking the real goal burning behind his eyes. A rattling carriage tears across the endless land, packed with quiet passengers as it barrels toward whatever new place is waiting for them. Clara sits in silence beside her child, calm for the moment, but you can feel the future hanging by a thread after they slip out of that territory. While everyone else talked, they caught on Harold had set everything up ahead of time, and they realized his moves weren't reckless at all. Harold orders the soldiers to escort Clara and Colette to the village, making sure they're relocated in total safety. He tosses gold coins as support, breaks down exactly what they're for, and leaves the soldiers staring in disbelief at his wild, unexpected generosity. Harold snapped back, barking orders to grab cheaper equipment, but underneath the cruelty, he secretly made sure Clara never ran out of resources. As they travel, Clara jolts awake quietly when the soldiers lean in and tell her the destination village is right around the corner. Clara blurts out thanks, then decides to soak in the views for a moment, while the soldiers nod and keep pressing forward, hauling the whole journey toward a safe arrival before sunrise. A blinding explosion erupts above the far-off village, lighting up the sky in an instant. Panic shrieked through the room. Clara vanished in a blink, burned so thoroughly she was unrecognizable, and not a single trace ever stayed behind. Harold's parents showered him with praise for his magic, but in his chest, doubt churned. He didn't trust them, and he didn't fully trust his own next move. Even after he saved the girls, Harold could still feel that cold, emotional distance from his parents sticking around. Zen burst in out of nowhere, eyes locked and face set like stone, then shut him down with a freezing dismissal, masking the real worry gnawing at him. He cracked jokes about the past, but Harold cut in fast, warning that night could unleash deadly consequences. Zen braced for a flat rejection, but Harold, scribbling in silence, quietly let him stay. No harsh blow-up. Harold shrugged off the class gap, remembered his name, and treated him like an equal. No superiority, no judgment. While Zen's smile lit up with gratitude, Harold zeroed in on the potion's dosage, eyes narrowing as he figured out every risk in grim, silent focus. His innocent questions sparked Harold's deadly sarcasm, and just like that the tension shattered, yet Harold's threat still felt terrifyingly real. As he raised the bottle and laid out his method, Zen snapped to it. This experiment was already in motion. Harold snapped the truth open. His life potions didn't just help plants, they turbocharged the crops and drove harvest value through the roof. Still, he owned up to his failures. Those wrong water ratios killed the plants before they ever gave him anything usable. He shoved Zen into tasting the raw fruit, straight up disgusting, and Zen finally understood he had zero power to refuse. Zen hesitated for a split second, then went for the bite, only to snap back in shock as a punchy burst of flavor hit, laced with a sweetness he never saw coming. Harold Grin let a sly grin creep in. His potion experiment had worked, and even if it wasn't like the game system, it still pulled off the win. He tore the truth out of the dark, while the farmers were crushed under brutal high taxes, disasters, and the cruelty of his own family's rule. He ordered Zen to hunt down feedback, personally taste the dishes, benchmark the market value, and pull comparisons, so his food research could be proven for real. Harold leaned in and warned Zen to keep everything under wraps. Zen, loyal to his bones, snapped to attention, understood right away, and agreed without hesitation. The boy burst off with pure excitement, and the Herald let out a heavy sigh, realizing just how wild and unpredictable that energetic kid could be. Harold watched Zen walk off, baffled by the sheer joy on his face, while Zen grinned, proud he'd earned Harold's trust. Harold trained in brutal silence, ears tuned, heart racing, ready to snap into action and strike without the slightest hesitation. Harold trusted his instincts and the perfect moment, then snapped into a sharp turn and unleashed a cut so precise it felt lethal. Kasuki clocked Harold's body stats and they were stronger than anyone expected, probably because his original in-game potential carried over. With sheer grit, he swore he could match Harold's power, then even blow past it. Harold knew the fight was coming no matter what, so he steeled himself for the day he'd slam head-on into the protagonist's party. Harold stared at the mountains, resolve blazing behind his eyes, and whispered, "Let's do this." Ahead, dark forests swallowed the horizon, once vibrant lands now lay dead and ruined, rotting from death like a curse, fading into darkness. Far away, in a peaceful estate, someone said the Stokes heir name out loud, and pure curiosity sparked in their voice. Erica took the mission in total control of herself, swearing she'd put her people first no matter what. The miasma raced through the air, and in a flash, citizens started keeling over, while a full third of the mountain was dying in its wake. To rescue the family economy, Erica's father decided to sell her future. Then regret crushed his voice as he said it. Erica gently shooed her maid away, helpless and trapped, and she refused to wallow in self-pity, because it wouldn't fix a single thing now. Staring into the wind, Erica clenched her resolve, because the only thing left to give her people was sacrifice. Jake took the financial report in silence, standing alone outside Harold's estate office, tension gripping him by the throat. Harold threw his support behind Norman, and Zen just stayed cool, handing over the report and daring Jake to hunt for a single mistake. Jake pored over the document like it was life or death, and to everyone's shock, every single detail checked out, no errors anywhere. Harold made his point crystal clear. He wasn't accusing Jake at all. He was just exposing how the Stokes family's finances were getting worse by the day. He broke it down. His parents' lavish, tax-funded lifestyle was utterly wiping out the family's wealth. Harold spilled the truth. Conditions were spiraling. Farms were shuttering left and right. People were fleeing, and economic despair swallowed their lands. Sensing the danger, Harold snapped that it was an emergency, because the Stokes family was heading straight for financial ruin. Jake snapped at Harold to watch every word. One rebellious sentence could spark rumors and land political trouble instantly. Even with everyone calling it a disaster, Harold flashed a sly smile, then summoned Jake, the agricultural inspector, to set things right. Jake challenged Harold's plan, but Zen cut in with a bright grin, casually holding something that had no clue how tense everything was. Jake jolted back in shock when Zen suddenly slammed a mysterious basket of strange red produce right in front of him. Zen proudly flaunted Harold's handmade red Groot, and Jake froze in confusion, caught off guard by the gift. Jake blinked in shock. The strange crop was grown by Harold himself, and suddenly every red flag in the air started screaming. He took a bite like he didn't trust it, then froze because the flavor hit him with this jaw-dropping sweetness, nothing like any regular crop he'd ever tasted. Harold spoke in a calm voice, revealing he'd grown it with a secret technique, one built to save their agriculture. He demanded Jake's help to spread his farming technique and breathe life back into the Stokes family's dying economy. Jake doubted the pick, but Harold snapped back that his finance and land management skills made him the perfect choice. Harold leaned in and hammered home how crucial Jake was. Every dollar, every tool, every piece of equipment had to check out before they could pull off large-scale agricultural reform. Jake swallowed his caution and agreed to help only if it could truly turn the crushing financial crisis around. Harold teased, saying if Jake's father caught wind of this plan, he'd end up behind bars. Zen and Norman let out a quiet laugh. Jake's reaction to Harold's warning was exactly what he'd expected, and it made perfect sense. Harold snapped at Zen and warned Jake, one more idiot holding the reins would just pile even more weight onto his shoulders. Harold thrust a strange object into view, the missing key to his revolutionary farming method, gripping it like it might burn his hands. He dubbed it the LP farming method, gulping life potions to supercharge his crops and crank their quality through the roof. Harold set up small trial runs with farmers, so if the method cracked under pressure, the damage wouldn't get out of hand. He laid out his whole master plan: crush the economic gap, grow the operation step by step, and squeeze every drop out of the life potion reserves. Cracking open expired life potions slashed their startup costs, and because most were tagged as waste-bound, the risk barely registered. They farm LP crops like Red Groot, and somehow they mature in just days, wiping out the usual farming schedule overnight. Harold couldn't stop worrying that if people found out, blame and danger would crash down on him, and that envious farmers would strike back with backlash. Harold pushed for ruthless rules and tiny, low-yield trials so no one could seize a monopoly or twist politics for their own gain. As Harold started laying out how they could expand their crop options, the room suddenly went dead quiet. Every new idea hit like a wave, and nobody knew what to say. Norman lauded Harold's razor-sharp, detailed vision, while Jake, completely swamped, apologized for not seeing how deeply Harold had planned everything on his own. Harold snapped that he wasn't perfect. He didn't want empty praise, he wanted real advice to sharpen his execution. Jake and Norman nodded with full conviction, finally getting exactly what Harold wanted, and how he commanded the room. Inside, Jake and Norman realized it. Harold wasn't chasing gold at all. He only burned with ambition and fought to help people survive. Harold pressed Jake again. Would he finally commit for real? Jake didn't say a word, but he stood up and stepped forward, fueled by Harold's unwavering conviction. Jake bet everything on Harold's plan, but Harold demanded one thing: fight for the people, not for yourself, if you want to live. Harold learns the Sumeragi have lined up a marriage for him with their daughter, an agreement meant to lock in powerful noble alliances. He fires back the name Fiang Fei from the game's tale, then immediately starts scrambling to make sense of this shocking twist. Even with all their prestige, the Sumeragi family seethes at this match. Pressured by money, they're forced to hand over Erica. Harold clocks that Sumeragi territory is rotten and unstable, cursed with choking miasma. Then every marriage plan and political negotiation starts falling apart. He smirks under his breath, already stitching together a plan to flip this whole mess into his strategic win. Harold tore through herbology books, hunting for rare ingredients, anything with medicinal punch or magical power he could somehow remember. Zen clocks Harold's grueling late-night study grind, then decides to let him be. Harold takes a hard look at Tasuku Sumeraga's impact and realizes he's the one keeping them from stumbling into deadly political traps down the road. Tasuku's alliance lets Harold move without a second thought and back the game's hero, right under everyone's nose. Even with danger lurking, Harold chooses one thing: win Tasuku's trust, because chasing that goal matters more than sticking to the original path. Harold seizes the engagement as his golden chance to reach Sumeragi, even as Zen's annoyingly cheerful meddling keeps popping in. Irritated by Zen's relentless push, Harold snaps and kicks him out fast because he can't afford to lose focus from his mission. Days slip by as Harold trains non-stop, digs into his studies, and drafts battle plans with ruthless focus for the encounter still on the horizon. Harold snaps awake to Zen's voice, and as their carriage rolls on, the Sumeragi estate finally bursts into view. Beyond the blooming trees, the quiet, fortified Sumeragi estate sits there like a locked vault, waiting for Harold's sudden arrival. Harold finally reaches the Sumeragi estate, hesitates at the door, and follows the rules, reluctantly slipping off his shoes before he even steps inside. Harold is escorted in with full respect, brought before the household's head for a serious, formal talk. Inside the room, Harold finally locks eyes with Erica Sumeragi, the heroine, and realizes she's the liner's future trusted companion. Harold can't stop remembering how Erica treats everyone with kindness, until you realize the only person she truly hates over and over is him. But if Erica jumps in with him too early, she could miss her chance to board the liner and smash the original timeline. Erica, the life-saving healer on the protagonist's team, is 100% essential if they're going to survive what's coming next. Harold realizes that survival doesn't matter if the world is about to collapse, and he knows Erica's trust is the one thing he can't live without. The Sumeragi family steps up and introduces themselves in full, and Harold leans in, eyes sharp, studying every single member like he's hunting for the perfect move. Harold greets them with shockingly polite manners, swallowing his usual attitude to make sure he leaves a perfect first impression. Harold can't believe it. Erica openly admits he's charming, but that calm smile still hides exactly what she's feeling. Harold senses her cold indifference and races to figure out the perfect way to reach her, but he's stuck on where to start. Tasuku and Hayden pitch the idea of giving them privacy, and Harold snaps to attention. This is his moment to finally connect with Erica. Erica doesn't hesitate. She accepts the request to guide Harold and promises she'll be back before dinner. As they set off on foot, Harold braces himself, because this talk could decide the fate of everything. As petals drifted down like a curse, Erica calmly closed the distance to Harold, and the feeling she gave off hit him like deja vu. She introduced herself as Tasuku Sumeraga's daughter, and her voice was packed with pride and sharp, careful caution. Harold shot back his name, and somehow it still felt like this meeting was set up on purpose, like no way this was just chance. Erica jabbed a finger at the ancient cherry blossom tree and told me how it was tied to her noble bloodline for generations. Harold clocked the tree's tail had holes and Erica locked onto him because she could feel he knew way more than he was letting on. He brushed off her suspicions and swore he didn't care, but Erica felt the cold indifference underneath, so she started questioning what he really thought about her bloodline. Erica figured Harold only wanted power, but he snapped back, trying to shove her out of the way. Harold pushed her buttons, hurling insults at the Sumeragi pride, and Erica's whole body went tight. She looked completely rattled. Harold snapped to it too late. He'd pushed too far, biting back regret as his reckless move shoved her into danger, all while threatening to blow up his hidden objective. He shoved a sealed letter into her hands and demanded she deliver it to her father without a single word. Erica coldly snatched away the envelope, and Harold warned her, ignore it, and death would come knocking. Realizing people's lives hung in the balance, Erica pressed for answers about the letter's message, and Harold leaned in with a quiet hint. There was hope hidden in it. A sudden gust whipped the air as they stood there, miles apart in spirit, and the silence crushed down, like the moment before everything changes. Carefully, Erica took the letter, and when their hands brushed for a split second, it felt like a razor-thin promise of trust. Harold walked away, but only after laying down one rule: trust later, let the results do the convincing. Harold burst back home and demanded answers on the spot, his mind locked onto the LP farming method. Norman the butler burst in with the good news: trial fields were locked down and the farmers were already starting to cooperate. Harold handed Jake the full rein, with Norman calmly holding steady, while everything moved forward quietly right under his parents' noses. Harold was counting on Erica to hand over the letter, because it laid out the miasma's truth and pointed to where the medicine might be found. Saving her own people would light a fire under Erica, one that could flip this crisis into the moment she joins Harold's side. Even though Tasuku might dismiss the letter, Harold still held his tongue and waited, refusing to step in until the time was right. Days later, Harold jumped back into training the others, but his patience snapped fast when his partner couldn't keep up with the expectations. Harold went for the jugular, pushing them with ruthless demands for real effort, and his savage threats were just a cover for the panic he couldn't say out loud. No matter how badly he wanted it, nobody went all in. Fear shackled them, and his real combat power never got the chance to explode. Training screeched to a halt when a butler burst in and announced a guest. Harold froze, then snapped with curiosity, wondering who in the world would dare show up for him. Harold couldn't believe it. Erica showed up in person, and her sudden arrival hit like a spark, stirring up way more than curiosity. Erica tore herself away from her family, eyes set with determination, while her father stood there, heartbroken, quietly accepting the brutal choice she'd made. Standing toe-to-toe with her father, Erica swore she'd be strong, her voice carrying both pride and the crushing weight of their people's future. Harold's cruel words rang in her ears, and Erica clutched that letter, bracing herself for what was coming next. With resolve blazing in her eyes, she pushed the letter forward, come whatever came next, and Erica swallowed her pride and resentment, choosing duty. Erica handed Harold's letter over, telling everyone his desperate request and how it could rescue the suffering citizens. With the weight of that duty crushing her shoulders, Erica swore she'd swallow every drop of disgrace, because protecting her people's lives was the only promise that mattered. Harold burst forward, stunned to see Erica there out of nowhere, right before the LP trial could even start. Erica calmly took sip after sip of tea, smooth, unreadable, perfectly poised, while Harold fought to even guess what she was planning. The Herald stepped up to her face to face, utterly baffled that she'd shown up out of the blue instead of sending word like a normal person. Erica fessed up, totally flustered by his icy tone, while Harold brushed it off with a polite dismissal. Harold let out a heavy sigh, spun away in frustration, but couldn't stop his curiosity about why she came and what could explode next. Harold snapped his arms across his chest and shot Erica a furious stare, demanding she finally say clearly why she'd shown up. Erica bowed and thanked him, her voice shaking as she made it clear his help stopped the illness from spreading and saved the citizens. He scoffed at their desperation, then watched as they grabbed unstable, temporary medicine like it was already out of time. Harold snapped that the cure wasn't finished yet, then warned her about the dangers and demanded proper compensation, no exceptions. He snapped that the treatment was limited and useless for real cases, then shut the door on any further responsibility. Erica quietly savored the weight of their engagement, still stunned that Harold stepped in to help. No power play, no political strings attached. She grilled Harold, stunned by how he whipped up medicine that fast, clinging to the mystery of where his knowledge came from. Harold pushed harder for answers, and that's when Erica finally cracked, admitting she was carrying a letter from her father. The letter snapped everything into place. Harold was officially on the hook, and it also exposed Erica as the messenger who delivered the antibiotic request. Grateful elders showered Harold with praise, admitting that plain words still couldn't ever repay the help he gave. Hope Harold poured over the reports, no side effects yet, but the long-term risks demanded non-stop, careful watching. The letter kept going, begging for Harold's shelter Erica and insisting it was all about her safety while Sumeragi territory spiraled out of control. Harold was left reeling, and Erica confessed her worries about sharing a home, especially since they were already engaged. Erica confessed her coach had come back, and now she was leaning on Harold for every shred of safety and shelter. Rage flared, Harold snapped back and rejected the demand as dishonorable, and Erica stared at his icy behavior toward his fiancée, like she couldn't believe he was acting so cold. Harold snapped at the arrangement, furious that all his earlier help earned him nothing but silence. Erica slipped away with a quiet nod, swallowed the rejection like it didn't hurt, and left Harold frozen in shock at how calm she looked. Left alone, Harold replayed every word in her head until the silence started to rattle her nerves and she slipped away before it could get worse. The Stokes family's coach pulled up, and in an instant, whispers rippled through town as everyone sensed something wildly off was about to go down. Harold caught the whispers nearby, smothering his rage, while the air itself screamed that trouble was brewing in silence. Just hours after Erica left, a formal letter showed up and confirmed she'd be staying with Harold. Harold got a direct order to go fetch her, even as he fought tooth and nail against the idea of living under the same roof. His suspicions got confirmed fast. Her early arrival wasn't luck. Someone had planned something way darker long before she even showed up. Harold grilled Erica, and the truth hit him hard. She never planned to leave his estate. He stared at the new timeline and realized it had shifted, and it all traced back to the letter he'd sent. Harold waited with bated breath for Erica's arrival. Then his jaw dropped when she showed up with another girl from Sumeragi in tow. Erica greeted him with polished manners, even as the Herald wore a mask of shock at her calm poise and the fact that she wasn't alone. She leaned in and said, "I'm Erica's personal attendant while she's at Stokes, like you already knew her." Harold clocked that you knew and that you weren't from the original story, and that's when dread hit, because this kind of plot twist can change anything at any time. He snapped at them, "Stay out of my way," because he had zero time to spare. Even after agreeing, Erica and Yuno won't budge, so Harold's patience snaps as their calm stubbornness grinds him down. Hayden blared out Erica and Yuno's names for everyone to hear, and Harold got publicly crushed in front of the whole staff. Harold's chest tightened when his father ordered the mansion to bow to Erica like royalty, loud, public, and proud for the whole world to see. Harold's horror hit full force. He'd been ordered to personally escort Erica around town like it was some kind of thank you that could get him killed. Erica smiled softly, and in that moment, Harold's fate was locked in, because he finally understood he couldn't dodge getting involved with her. A sealed letter from Harold slipped into the Sumeragi estate without a sound, then instantly grabbed everyone's attention. Elder Sumeragi read it out loud, and Tasuku immediately snapped that its surprising honesty felt dangerously suspicious. Tasuku pointed out that even if the warning was true or false, the Stokes family still got absolutely nothing from sending it. They realized the message was basically screaming, "I'm breaking from the inside." A rare, honest confession coming from someone like Harold of Stokes. Unconvinced, Harold put it on paper, and the elder immediately smelled manipulation, like Harold was just another pawn in someone else's game. The elders started to distrust Harold's motives fast, sure that his letter was meant to hurt Stokes, not help him. They figured someone could be dangling favors in front of Harold, or worse, yanking the strings and turning him into a puppet. The elder snapped that waiting would feed their enemies, and that this bold move was downright reckless. Even with doubts gnawing at them, they still decided the letter was probably the real deal, so they had to take it seriously. Tasuku got the order to prepare. Anyone brave enough to take the risk could step in and go by the warning they'd been given. At the Stokes estate, the guests were greeted like royalty, and the locals brought out their best dishes for everyone to devour. Erica and Yuno dug into the food with hungry smiles, but Harold stayed silent. His mind kept spiraling, heavy with lingering thoughts and worries he never dared to say. His mom clocked something was off, pressed him with a sharp question, and Harold brushed it off with shaky nerves and a straight-up denial. She openly checked his condition right at the formal guest dinner, and the whole room's gaze snapped to them, turning embarrassment into a spotlight. Laughter poured in, and with every joke about Harold's bashful ways, his discomfort melted away. Mortified by the teasing, Harold snapped back with a sharp sarcasm, seething because they were treating him like a kid again. While the family kept talking, Harold shoved food down with pure rage, burning to get out of there right now. Later, Erica and Yuno started grilling Harold's behavior, wondering if his old rebellious streak was still driving everything he did. Erica replayed her father's warning in her head, praying Harold wasn't being played or secretly working with the traitor. Clenched her jaw, she realized they had to uncover Harold's real motives, because if they didn't, the threat hanging over Sumeragi wouldn't back off. Yuno finally spilled the real reason she came. She'd been sent to quietly sniff out Harold without drawing a single eye. Erica snapped a warning at Yuno to stay on her guard, and Yuno grinned. Stealth and deduction were her weapons. That night, Yuno watched Erica drift into sleep, then slipped out like a whisper, eyes sharp, heart set on what came next. She leaned out of the open window, lost in thought about what Harold was really up to and why he'd been acting so mysterious. You know the real reason. If Harold was acting up or siding with traitors, the signs would have already surfaced. She remembered the order Erica got to rattle Harold's emotions, but somehow nothing shifted at all. You questioned those hypnosis claims, sensing they might be true or might be total nonsense, but you refused to write them off. Uno knew this mission would take everything, so he stashed secret tools and pushed forward with one goal: cracking Harold's truth wide open. Nobles barked warnings like law itself, while common folk got mocked, treated like nothing but tools, and beaten for even the tiniest flaw. Citizens, squeezed by brutal taxes and crushing poverty, murmured about injustice in trembling whispers. Then the military shut every uprising down fast. Uno leaned in, listened hard, and stitched together scraps of truth from strangers, dead set on uncovering the town's brutal past. Curiosity sparked in Uno. She grilled them about Harold while whispers swore something was off. Then her son's actions lit a fuse, and unrest only kept swelling. When the secret finally hit her ears, Uno's face went rigid, because Harold was tangled up in something deadly. You could feel his hesitation as he balked at the rumors, but the nobles kept trading whispers and the estate buzzed with secrets. Fear ripped through the street in seconds, doors slammed shut, neighbors bolted indoors, and when something or someone stepped onto that silent road, everyone disappeared. Two shadowy figures moved in silence. Every step sent townsfolk scattering their eyes away, and whispers crackled with tension like it might snap at any moment. Harold and Erica show up side by side, and the locals go uneasy on the spot, while Harold starts hunting down a specific store. Or with a rude grin as if they'd known him forever, Harold walked in. Then the room spun, because this territory had never shown up on any map. Harold demanded clothes for Erica and promised to pay late, and the shopkeeper, shaking with nerves, complied instantly. Erica took the gift with shaky hands, grateful, sure, but totally baffled, because Harold always felt impossible to read. Harold sat there thinking. Erica brushed the rumors off, but that dark suspicion still hung in the air. Danger for everyone else was still waiting to strike. And when Erica looked completely rattled, Harold slammed the brakes on the day and ended the outing. Then they slipped out quietly, both carrying heavy worries they never dared to say. From the next building over, Yuno stared in silence, her mind racing, plans snapping into place, suspicions growing teeth. Harold studied the harvest report, and the numbers looked promising, but dread tightened his gut as he realized expansion might stretch their manpower too thin. Norman shot back that labor had limits. Without inspections, greedy farmers would sabotage progress, so Harold had to secure trustworthy inspectors right now. Harold weighed his options, but every normal worker was already swamped, so he'd have to bring in outsiders, yet trust kept slamming into him like a brick wall. Harold tested his options in his head, planned every step like a mission, then asked for more help, choosing efficiency over reckless speed. Jake filed the experimental field results, and the life potions did absolutely nothing. The rotation schedules and harvest plans stayed locked on the exact same course. Harold checked the crops and found no taste differences at all, then ordered everyone to keep observing, so the samples could be monitored and grown the right way over time. Erica sat still, her mind weighed down by worry, while Yuno lurked in the corner, silent, sharp, listening like he was measuring every sound. Yuno stepped in and greeted Erica, and that quick backhand forth showed they actually trusted each other. Still, something sharp and uneasy hung in the air. Harold stared at the truth. Most citizens barely even backed the Stokes family, and Yauno added that plain, everyday hatred had been driving all of it, way stronger than anyone expected. Uno smirked and said the investigations pulled up more than anyone expected, and Erica listened with a sharp, thoughtful focus, while staying fully on guard for what might come next. She leaned in hard as Uno spilled the terrifying story, and the mystery hooked her curiosity in the deepest way. Once Harold snapped with magic and torched the servant's home, leaving it in ruin, while Erica swallowed the shock and stayed silent. Uno laid out Clara's murder in full, proving her daughter was innocent and making it crystal clear just how brutally wrong Harold's actions were. She realized the testimonies backed Harold's deeds, and once she saw the danger clearly, the truth hit her like a weight she couldn't shake. Even with all that cruelty, Harold still dangled hope for Sumeraga's people, leaving Erica torn but fueled to stay resolute no matter what. She leans in, eyes sharp, and the tale of Harold Peak's unstoppable curiosity clicks, like it's quietly pointing to secrets nobody's found yet. Uno uncovers the terrifying claim that Harold used magic. Then she learns he burned a servant's whole family, and the truth hits her like a punch. Erica challenges those rumors, clinging to the servant's terrifying testimonies. Then fear starts to claw its way inside her. Even with fear clawing at him, Yuno leans into Erica's calm reassurance and finally gets it. He can't drop his guard for even a second. Harold confidently declares that danger will blow over, but Uno's worry clashes with his calm, hinting that messy, complicated trouble is about to hit next. After Erica came back from her trip with Harold, her maids started whispering that her health was slipping fast. Alone by the window, Erica went silent, trapped in thoughts that wouldn't let her go. Out in the hills, far from everyone, Harold trained by himself, gritting his teeth, fighting to protect what he almost lost. Harold, fueled by solitude and razor-sharp purpose, clutched his sword tight and hammered focused power into every single swing. Lightning exploded from his blade as raw power surged through him, and a vow burned bright: he'd meet destiny head-on, with zero regrets. Harold tore open the sky with lightning, blasting a massive surge of energy that ripped straight through the open field. Cracks tore open the ground, the trees thrashed like they were being ripped apart, and dust shot into the air as lightning blasted the forest in half. With the silence back in his ears, Harold stared as the sparks died out, his fists tight and a storm of doubt crushing his chest. Even with everything torn apart, Harold let out a bitter sigh, frustration crashing down as he realized his power still couldn't stack up to the game's version. Haunted by impossible expectations, Harold swore he'd break every limit, because if he folded now, death would come for them all later. Hidden behind the trees, you quietly watch Harold's training grounds as a blast of light erupts in front of you. When you clock Harold's raw power, your throat tightens and you gulp, because now you're desperate to know what dark secrets he's been hiding from everyone. She wrestled with the idea of confronting him, but the fear of his retaliation crushed her. She knew his magic-boosted sword skills could cut through her before she even got a chance. Yuno swallowed her fear and chose caution, then slipped back into the forest, ready to watch him again another time. Suddenly, Harold clocked her in an instant, demanding she show herself, so Unicat got caught and left exposed. You could see frozen, stuck in uncertainty, as it hit her that Harold might have clocked her spying from the very first moment. Staring at the sword right next to her, she finally swallowed the truth. Running or pretending wouldn't save her this time. Harold panicked inside as he realized the sword throw wasn't a choice at all. It was just a brutal slip of control, and he couldn't believe how badly it went. When nothing moved, Harold panicked. Did he break someone badly? And his mind spiraled into frantic, guilty overthinking. Yuno finally stepped out, smirking at the truth, admitting she was just too curious, while Harold froze, utterly baffled by her sudden, heartfelt apology. Relieved she wasn't hurt, Harold breathed out, and then couldn't help wondering why she cared so much about his training. He snapped at her, straight-faced, telling her not to sneak around again, because if he couldn't see her, she was playing with disaster. Juno forced a nervous smile, realizing his words weren't a threat at all. They were a blunt, serious warning. Feeling just how heavy Harold's power really is, you finally realize you can't risk another reckless move. He couldn't stop thinking about Erica. Could she really protect Erica from a monster like Harold if it ever came to it? Harold stood there like a statue, calm, deadly, and glowing with talent, his razor-sharp mind matching stride for stride with his rising magical combat power. Yuno swallowed his pride and admitted defeat, because once he saw Harold's power wasn't luck, he realized this wasn't some simple puppet. But Harold found out Erica still was well, and Yano guessed the weird new surroundings were messing with her. Frustrated, Harold brushed the engagement off as temporary, shoving away any real emotional ties. Then Uno snapped back and called him out. Caught his own mistake, Harold snapped into panic, and Uno's razor-sharp words hit him so hard he instantly regretted showing how much he cared. Harold, seething over the engagement topic, snapped out loud while still burying his doubts about whether it would ever work. Suspicious of Erica's worsening condition, Harold grilled her about whether her state still matched the game's original character profile. Yuno's face twitched as she felt the vibe snap into something darker, and her gut screamed, "This is a flag. This is about to get bad." Erica sat by her window in eerie silence, gaze drifting far away as feelings churned inside her, real, intense, and still too mysterious for even her to name. Harold's heart slammed as he realized, after training was over, he'd left his sword buried somewhere in the forest. As he bolted outside, he caught Erica standing there all alone, after she'd just been stuck in bed sick. Harold's worry hit hard. He hesitated, staring at Erica like, "Are you really okay to walk on your own?" She wore a pale face, but her resolve burned bright. Harold knew he had to steer her back before she crashed again. Trying to do the right thing, Harold snapped on instinct, then accidentally insulted Erica and sent her glare into full-blown fury. Harold's frustration exploded as Erica stayed silent, and he couldn't wrap his head around why she wouldn't answer him even once. He figured she couldn't stand him, so he backed off, swallowed his words, and let her slip back in the quiet by herself. With a chilling cold look, Harold brushed off her condition until Erica finally snapped, "Stop," and forced him to halt. Erica sucked in a breath, fought the nerves, and then, still steady, told him she had a serious question for him. She pressed him, demanding to know if those rumors were real. Did he really torch a servant with magic, the very fear she'd been dreading? Harold caught the rumor the second it hit the air, and he instantly figured everyone must have already heard about that servant incident. He calmly denied it, and that twist shocked Erica. Right when her hope flared, he answered without even pausing. Suddenly, Harold snapped his tone and viciously admitted he killed Clara and Colette for nothing. He kept jeering at the dead, slamming them as livestock, and swore that murdering on a whim was just how things worked. Erica begged him to stop, but Harold only cackled louder, saying the victims should be grateful to die. Without a second thought, Erica snapped and slapped Harold across the face, finally breaking under his cruelty. Tears streamed as rage shook her, and Erica held her ground, while Harold went deathly silent, stunned out of his mind. With tears streaming down her face, she screamed that Harold was the most despicable person she'd ever known. Erica spun away and declared she was finished, and Harold tried to mock her, but his smile flickered and faltered. She strode away with unshakable dignity, and Harold was left alone out in the field, until his face finally cracked with regret. Harold stood there still as stone and kept rubbing his cheek. Erica's slap had carved up more than pain. Zen trotted over with a bright grin, clueless about what just went down, while Harold blew right past him, said nothing, and stormed straight to his room. He followed it home with worry, clocking Harold's silence, and even when he tried to brush it off with small talk, Harold gave him nothing back. Harold snapped at Zen, demanding he keep his distance all day. No questions, no explanations, just leave him be. Zen protested, but Harold grabbed him and shoved him out, yelling at full volume. Harold needed that space to process what had just gone down. After it all went down, he just froze outside the door, shocked, aching, and totally thrown by Harold's cruel dismissal and that brutal silence. Inside, Harold pressed his shoulder to the door, while Zen whispered his name. He slid down and let out a heavy sigh, then his mask slipped away, and he just sat there in crushing silence, staring like the weight of everything was etched into his face. Harold finally confessed he shoved Erica away only to shield her. But even so, her words still carved straight into his heart. He clenched his fists so tight it hurt, and if he couldn't push through this, then survival in this world was dead on arrival. Harold jolted awake, dazed and blinking, as the afternoon sunlight spilled through the curtains beside him. He jerked himself upright, clutching his throbbing cheek, replaying yesterday's brutal slap, and realizing he'd overslept and missed the morning. Harold grimaced at that slap. Sure, players might laugh, but in real life that kind of pain just isn't fun. His stomach rumbled like thunder, ripping him out of his thoughts. Now all he could think about was food. Between bites, Norman burst in with real worry, clocked how late and worn out Harold looked, then called him in properly, no delays. Harold snapped his attention back, remembering that old conversation about spreading the LP farming method to people outside their circle. Norman swung by Harold's place, begging for a bigger workforce, asking straight up if he'd cooked up a brilliant plan. Harold pitched his farming method to the merchants and pushed for distribution by locking it in with business contracts. He cooks up the plan, merchants resell the method to farmers and split the profits evenly, but it only works if they bring in trusted inspectors. Since he had no trustworthy company to lean on, Harold grabbed onto Norman and Jake's ideas and ran with them. Harold and Norman huddled over their problem, no merchant contacts at all, and then the gut punch hit. Even the independent traders were drying up too. Even when Harold brought up the whole deal with his parents, he still nodded and pulled Jake into it. Then they set out to contact merchants. Outside the door, Zen hammered on it with anxious knocks, yelling for Harold, only for silence to swallow every word. Zen leaned in, spotted the room had gone completely empty, and realized Harold was already gone, slipping out so quietly nobody heard him. Frustration burned in Zen's chest as he stormed off, grumbling under his breath, because Harold disappeared again, probably out training, and it was still barely morning. Zen burst into the room and greeted Erica, shocked to find her alone, sitting there in eerie calm. As Zen introduced himself, he learned Yuno had already slipped out, while Erica fired questions about why he'd shown up out of nowhere. Erica thought Zen had come for the Herald, but Zen snapped that he only showed up because the rooms nearby were calling him. Zen called out Harold's non-stop grind, and Erica kept it to herself, quiet worry brewing as she felt something darker hiding behind his latest moves. She grilled Zen about how much he even knew, and learned Harold had used magic to kill a servant. Zen confessed he'd heard the rumor, but doubts slammed into him hard. He wouldn't bet his faith on anything without proof. Erica snapped an answer, Harold backed it up himself, and the servant turned out to be one of their own. Conflicted and shaken, Erica couldn't stop herself from asking how Zen could still back Harold after learning the truth of what had happened. And she froze in place and stared down, shocked that she could ever accept someone who's been stealing lives. Haunted by Harold's crime, she couldn't stop asking herself the only question that mattered. How do you ever forgive someone after they're gone? Erica, shredded by duty and raw pain, fought to hold her ground in her role as Fiang Fei, the ruthless political weapon they wanted her to be. With tears streaming down her face, Harold told Zen she couldn't forgive Harold, no matter what. Blushing with shame over her own emotional explosion, Erica swallowed her pride and apologized in a quiet whisper, mortified that she'd shown that much vulnerability to someone else. She spun around to go, mumbling a quiet goodbye as she left, and Zen just stood there, frozen in silence. As she disappeared from sight, Zen couldn't stop wondering, was this battered girl really just like Harold, fighting her battles all by herself? Harold carried crushing shame for the murder he did to save lives, while Erica slammed into her heartbreak. Harold and Erica might be cut from the same cloth, but now they're walking different paths. Pain ripped their hearts apart. Zen couldn't stand the gap between them, so he swore that their bond was strong enough to pull them back together. With a sharp shout, Zen grabbed the moment and told Erica to come with him, stunning her with pure, sudden determination. He feared Harold's inner war would tear him apart, and he couldn't stand the thought of watching it happen. Harold trudges on solo, clueless that Zen is terrified she'll lose him, because he's swallowed his pain and gone silent. With iron resolve, Zen swears he'll never forgive himself if he can't save Harold. Zen throws himself at the situation, fully and completely, even if it gets him nowhere, ready to help Erica no matter what she needs. He begs Erica for her attention, voice shaking with urgency. She has to hear this before he walks away. Erica nods and accepts his offer on the spot, eyes locked in with curiosity as she's ready to chase Zen wherever his next move takes them. Zen grins and shoves a stunned Erica ahead the moment they hit a massive, locked double door. Even with Erica protesting, Zen grins and barges in anyway, steamrolling the rules and hauling her through the doorway. With a grin, he blurts out where they're headed, Harold's private room, and it knocks Erica clean off her feet. Erica's jaw drops and her eyes go huge as the reality slams into her, and she can barely keep up with what she's seeing. Zen yanked Erica inside, shot off a quick apology, and slammed the door shut just as Harold showed up. Harold looked furious, startled by the roar. Zen greeted him with shaking nerves, already sensing Harold's rage. He grilled Zen for barging in, and when Zen got caught red-handed, she crumbled under a lousy lie, while Harold kept tearing into his intelligence with zero mercy. Erica crouched behind the blinds, panicking in silence, cursing Zen's timing and her own hesitation. Zen shot forward, panicking as he tried to explain everything fast, yet Harold, completely unimpressed, ordered him to make it quick. He explained how town gossip about Clara spread like wildfire, grabbing unwanted eyes every time he ran errands. He feared the silence would torch Harold's name for good, so he pushed hard to shut down the rumors before they snowballed any further. Even with Zen pounding on him, Harold wouldn't budge. He just couldn't see the point in reacting to plain gossip. Harold shot off a sarcastic offer to spill Clara's location, pushing Zen's limits, while Erica accidentally caught the whole thing. Stunned, Zen braced himself and refused to budge, while Erica stayed hidden and silent, feeling exposed and somehow safer at the same time because Zen's loyalty had her covered. Harold insists secrecy is locked down tight. No one, not even Erica, gets to know because he's willing to shield everybody and make sure he's protected most of all. Zen pleads, pointing out Erica's heartbreak, but Harold stays ice cold, straight up rejecting the idea, no hesitation, no sympathy. He glares with razor-sharp fury, and Zen freezes for a breath, scrambling to find words without slipping the game truth he already knows. Harold fears one wrong move will ignite Erica's hatred, but Zen's kindness could throw a wrench in everything Harold's trying to control. He hesitates for a second, then quietly admits Erica was crying like a crack in his armor, proof he might still care. Harold snaps at Erica for being foolish enough to feel sorry for him, then drives the knife in, asking if her tears are for the dead or for him. He swears her kindness is poison, worse than useless, for anyone who dares to stand near someone like him. Zen clocks that Harold's brutal words are really worry in disguise. Then Harold pushes Erica away because he's convinced it's the only way to protect them both. With every pressure strike, Zen blurts out, wondering if Harold really plans to ditch marriage with Erica altogether. Harold snaps, shutting down their engagement like it's nothing but a cold, politically convenient trade. Years ago, a deadly miasma swept through the forests, wrecking Sumeraji's economy and shaking their political power to the core. Zen's terrified that breaking the engagement will wreck Sumeraji's whole future, but Harold just stays cool and swears it's already handled. Harold finally spills the truth. He handed Erica a confidential letter and told her to deliver it to Sumerage's leader, Tasuku. Zen and Erica go wide-eyed because Harold has already been moving in the shadows, pulling the strings quietly this whole time. Inside, the letter was a cure for the miasma and a full blueprint to bring the forest industry roaring back to life. Harold admits that the letter only hints at sharing techniques, and basically says he's willing to blow up the engagement if it means getting his way. He trusts the Sumeragi family can hold out on their own, backs them with his help, and passes along Erica's intel. Zen finally clicks Harold's plan was pure strategy, darkly planned from the start, while Harold lets out a small, smug smirk knowing Zen gets it. Harold grabs Zen's attention and warns him to face his own grim future, while Erica stands there, quiet and clueless, waiting to see what happens next. He bluntly warns that Stokes could drop at any moment, then hammers Zen to brace for sudden unemployment. Harold shut the mediation down and warned, without real reforms, Stokes' collapse will only be postponed for a little while. Too scared to gamble, Harold bet everything that Tasuku would step in before disaster crushed the citizens for good. Erica and Zen were totally baffled because Harold's cryptic words made it sound like hidden deals were already in motion, full of secret terms and deeper arrangements. Harold had already locked in citizen protection with Tasuku, making sure everyone got fair treatment if the whole world crumbled. Sternly slammed the conversation shut, and if Zen leaked a single thing, he'd erase Zen without leaving a trace. Zen fidgeted and swore through his nerves to stay silent, while Erica froze in place, her heart breaking in quiet, steady beats. Harold barked at Zen to get out, but Zen froze mid-step, sensing something deeper lurking beneath Harold's usual rudeness. Xena blurted out a sudden question about Harold's plans, and in that instant her long-secret obsession with swordplay and battle training came to the surface. Harold's sudden, unstoppable enthusiasm to watch him train totally blindsided him, until they both just stood there, sharing the same bewildered confusion. Harold freezes in place, realizing he's completely lost track of his own training goals, trapped under a storm of politics, lies, and emotional walls he can't break through. Zen's nerves spike as he studies the twin blades, then he finally agrees to demonstrate, and he only does it as a rare, special favor. With a twisted grin, Harold snapped at Zen to keep charging forward, or face a training injury that could get seriously ugly. Zen freezes in panic when he realizes Harold means business, begging as they seize him and haul him off to start brutal sparring. As chaos erupts, Erica slips out of the room in silence, her mind heavy and her steps trembling with hesitation. Erica strides alone with her fists clenched, hauling the crushing truth she overheard, knowing she can't strike back yet. She drifted down the hallway in deafening silence, her heart packed with secrets she had zero business uncovering, like she just stumbled onto something she wasn't meant to hear. Harold's threat about Clara and Colette kept spinning in Clara's head as she sprinted forward. Erica blurted Yuno's name in panic, her face trembling as burning questions clawed at her for answers. Determined, Erica burst into the room and jolted Yuno out of her surprise, because she didn't just want to guess, she needed to know it was really true. Erica and Yuno huddled close, whispering over the recent chaos. Then the weird antibiotic source suddenly clicked into place. Erica laid out Sumeraga's hard work even as everyone else scoured for answers, but no samples showed up and no development records ever turned up. Harold saw the disaster coming and cooked up his answers years before anyone even noticed danger was creeping closer. Even though it had nothing to do with them, Harold still poured his heart into making the drug, working hard for something that promised no real payoff. Yano stared hard into the moment, and as he recalled how his senses had alerted him to her spying, he realized something felt wildly wrong, so wrong it screamed suspicion. Erica clocked Harold's motives and she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all a setup, designed to bait and provoke her. Yuno smirked through her nerves, and the more she studied Harold's every move, the more his intentions slipped out of reach. Elsewhere, Harold let out a heavy sigh, realizing 3 weeks had already crawled by since the incident shattered his calm routine. Burned out and seething, Harold caught that Erica and Yuno still hadn't left. Their presence hung in the air like a weight. Norman burst into Harold's room, and the urgency in his eyes screamed that something terrifying, or at least wildly unexpected, was about to demand Harold's attention. He burst in with breaking news. Turns out Harold had been summoned by the family master for a conversation that couldn't wait. His father broke it all down for him, Erica's condition, and at Yuno's command, she'd be sent back to Sumeragi territory. Harold practically celebrated too early, convinced Erica's leaving meant they'd be torn apart, until they told him he'd be the one escorting her. Panic slammed into him when he realized he'd be stuck at their estate just to keep their bond growing, right there in each other's faces, day after day. His father demanded Harold prove his sincerity, because Erica wasn't just any girl, she was his fiancée and his beloved daughter. The second Harold heard sincerity, panic exploded in his chest, and he desperately tried to dodge Erica like she was trouble. A wild idea hit him. Maybe he could turn this trip into a full-on push to promote the LP farming method. That plan felt doomed everywhere else, but Sumeraga's pull could flip the whole game. Harold took a calculated leap of faith. He trusted Tasuku, then stepped forward with full confidence. He flashed a smile and played along, shoving his real intentions deep down, and the master swallowed every word like it was the truth. In Blosha village, a traveler slipped in under the radar, then leaned on a local and demanded answers about someone important. With a calm grin, the man dropped his real goal, and he wasn't hunting just anyone. He was searching for a woman named Clara Amaler. Clara hums under her breath, lifting the very last sheet into place, and finally savors the quiet after months of non-stop uncertainty. She stepped back with a satisfied breath, never sensing that this kind of eerie calm always comes right before something awful breaks. A cool breeze kissed her skin, and Clara snapped rigid as that heavy silence slammed into memories she'd never been brave enough to face. 5 months dragged by, but that quiet hill still murmured about Harold's final chilling moment. Clara remembered everything: Harold's execution, the way she couldn't stop it, and the day her whole world shattered. Harold, still just a kid, saved them in silence, his raw power tucked away behind youthful eyes. Clara couldn't shake him, his name kept haunting her, and those unanswered questions stirred in her chest like a quiet fire she couldn't put out. Trapped by cruel rules, she dreaded even the smallest touch, because one slip from her could spell disaster, and he couldn't risk that nightmare again. Leona greeted her with warmth, while Clara's mind spiraled into memories she couldn't possibly put into words. Clara's grin crumbled as she turned her back. Harold was still out there, but light years away from the world she called home. Clara flashed a smile, already dreaming of cookies, while a stranger's footsteps crept toward the house without a clue. A hooded traveler stepped into view and shouted her name, and Clara froze, her heart clenched hard at the sound. His smile vanished, serious as stone, as he shot a straight question about Harold, and Clara froze like someone pulled the lights out. He dropped a chilling rumor: Harold had murdered someone. Clara froze on the spot, terrified of what was true and what she should fight to deny. Her mind spun. This man knew Harold's name, yet he hadn't struck, and that left suspicion and concern fighting in silence. Clara shoved out a lie, pushed the stranger away, and left her heart racing, because she had no idea what kind of danger he might actually be bringing. She trembled, picturing the worst-case outcome. If the Lord swallowed those rumors, Harold's life could be snuffed out in an instant. Tears burned in Clara's eyes as she prayed with trembling hands, clutching tight and begging the Herald to be safe, pure, silent faith holding her together. With petals drifting down, her desperate plea lingered in the air as Harold finally showed up at the new place's gate. Warm voices greeted Harold, but tension still knotted in his gut. His fate hung in the air, and his journey wasn't done yet. Right after they arrived, the group got greeted with open arms, until Harold cut in and demanded a private word with Tasuku. Harold demanded time and snapped that Tasuku was a loser, but Tasuku just grinned calmly and rolled with it. Surprisingly, Tasuku kept his cool and Harold nodded to delay, though inside, fear gnawed at him like he'd pushed it too far. Harold's jaw dropped in shock. Tasuku stayed locked in like he stepped straight out of the story, and Yuno watched the whole thing in silence from the distance. Later, Yuno strode straight up to Tasuku, her eyes sharp and serious. Then Tasuku spun around, ready to hear whatever she was about to say. She shoved over a super detailed report, an update on the Herald, and everything that had been going down in Stokes' territory. Tasuku thanked her. Yuno took a step back and stared him down, praying her efforts would finally pay off. No matter how hard she pushed, Uno's investigation went nowhere. Harold's servants slipped past every question, and Harold's trail just kept coming up painfully empty. Still, she spotted a single crack, and Zen's silence finally split open just enough truth to show itself. Private investigators shadowed Harold's every move, yet even out in the fields, he kept his actions locked behind a curtain of secrecy. Uno studied the farmer community up close, tight, stubborn, and fiercely private, so any outsider would need the perfect timing and earn trust first. Just as she tried to map out her next move, a voice snapped through the air. News came rushing back way sooner than anyone expected. The messenger nailed Clara's location, and Yuno smirked like she already knew, gearing up to dig up more than surface-level truth. He told them Clara did know Harold, then slammed the brakes, refusing to say a single thing about what happened. Yuno nodded like everything was fine, but the moment she did, disappointment flickered across her face, and her mind sprinted through what her silence could possibly mean. Knowing nobody else could pull this off, Yuno let out a small, fearless smile. She'd confront Clara head-on herself. Harold sat there with tea, eyes locked on the clock as he paced in his mind over Tasuku's delay, while his calm patience masked a much darker strategic worry. With his game instincts kicking in, Harold slapped the LP farming method into action, determined to secure the Stokes family's future. He clocked exactly what the Sumeraji family wanted, and then turned their crisis into his bargaining chip to set up an eventual alliance on his terms. By sending Tasuku that letter, Harold quietly set up a secret alliance, maneuvering just right so those death flags never stood a chance. Harold knew those Togging trust trials had to happen, raw, brutal tests that could still get Tasuku rejected and watched like a threat. Harold realized the LP expansion wouldn't happen without Tasuku. He needed manpower, and now it all rode on Tasuku's help and resources. Harold was done sitting around. He steeled himself for a wild proposal, because he knew one no would slam him right back into ruin. Tasuku slid in late, and Harold greeted him with a cool smile that hid the urgency gnawing underneath. He thanked the antibiotics like they saved his life, while Harold stayed icy and distant, clinging to that same tough act just to dodge anyone's suspicion or pity. Tasuku doubted the changes, but he couldn't deny Harold's hit of influence, while Harold stayed shut tight, masking his relief with that rehearsed, empty calm. Harold mocked Tasuku, forced a cruel smile, fighting his nerves while knowing one thing: staying on top would lock in his reputation and give him the upper hand. Tasuku didn't flinch. He answered with real warmth, genuinely wowed by Harold's ambition even though the guy came off arrogant and loud. Harold snapped his tone instantly, pressing for cooperation like it was a promise, confident on the outside, but panic about the ticking clock was clawing at him. He slid the documents over with zero fuss, eyes locked on the fallout, not applause, then shoved Tasuku toward the decision like there was no time to breathe. Tasuku dove into the LP farming method data, and the healing-based crop experiments absolutely blew him away with their results. Staring at the harvest graph, he froze, because the numbers screamed massive gains over traditional farming methods. Harold flashed a confident smirk because those jaw-dropping results left absolutely no space for doubt. or for anyone to say no now. Tasuku had no choice but to accept the crushing truth, and the herald doubled down, proving it was right, standing tall with unstoppable calm and confidence. Even with his doubts, Tasuku admitted the results hooked him hard, because he still remembered how Harold once helped him with antibiotics. Harold leaned in and told Tasuku that asking costs nothing, and Tasuku nodded instantly, already picturing profits the moment he started sharing what he knew. As he tossed the manuscript out like it was nothing, Harold played it cool, hiding how deadly important it really was. Tasuku clocked it right away. This wasn't some trick. The kid moved with real independence, fueled by conviction and a cold, deliberate plan. Tasuku had to admit it, Harold's sharp clarity wasn't something you could teach, because that man was way too smart to ever be anyone's puppet. Tasuku figured turning down the chat could still help them, and Harold stepped in with his offer, worth something but no promise. But Harold sat there letting Tasuku take the wheel, and the real negotiation hadn't even kicked off yet. Tasuku froze for a beat, wondering if Harold's offer was bait, or a ruthless test of tech that would fall apart the second it mattered. Fist clenched, Suku vowed to uncover Harold's motives, no matter what, while shielding the Sumeragi clan. Harold tossed out the terms without sugarcoating, and Tasuku nodded along, because refusing now would have killed the negotiations on the spot. He snapped at Tasuku's judgment, demanded a forecast for the date as future, and tore into him with brutal insults. Tasuku mapped out a plan to test the production right in his hometown first, then blow it up bigger once the results stayed consistent. As Harold grilled his motives, Tasuku stayed ice calm and warned him this wasn't just a dispute, it was greed and control sparking a full-blown conflict. Harold smirked and he and his ally locked eyes, because they both knew power can't just sit above everyone and start a rebellion. Tasuku nodded and agreed to hear him out, and Harold insisted the whole discussion was no accident. It was woven into his bigger strategic plan. With his final breath, Harold handpicked Tasuku as co-developer, one dangerous title loaded with power and fate. Harold stood there like he owned the room, declaring his bold plan to turn Tasuku into the next big symbol of success. Still reeling from Tasuku's confusion, Harold strode in and declared that the LP method would now carry the Sumeragi family name. Tasuku couldn't shake the feeling that Harold was hiding his real talents, because the moment his attitude changed, everything shifted hard. He realized Harold's genius was invisible to his own parents, who never once boosted him in those meetings. Tasuku carefully pressed Harold, asking if hiding the LP method from their parents was really his own choice. Harold was terrified his parents would twist the method for their own gain, and with zero backup, he desperately needed Sumeraga's help. Tasuku doubted his own pick, and Harold bluntly shut him down. Tasuku was just the easiest candidate they had. Before Tasuku could even get a word out, he shot back with total confidence. There'd be no need for any other candidate. Tasuku tore into Harold, accusing him of manipulation, and Harold just smirked, because he knew Tasuku was already mentally caught in the agreement. He realized Harold had trapped him with cool precision, cutting off every escape while pressing in with quiet, calculated confidence. Tasuku pieced together the letter's clues, and Harold's master plan for their survival and the strategy behind it clicked into place. Alone in his office, Tasuku reread Harold's letter, then it hit him. Harold had seen their brutal trouble coming. The letter tore the Stokes family's corruption wide open, and it screamed at Tasuku to move fast before the citizens erupted in violent revolt. Harold laid out 3 frantic moves for getting back on track: synthesize antibiotics, lock down defensive positioning, and use an industrial technique to speed recovery. Tasuku finally got it. If he met Harold's demands, he'd break free completely. No more getting tangled in the Stokes family's collapsing pull. Harold dropped one last condition: break off your engagement with Erica, or we don't move forward. Tasuku finally got it. Harold's technique and the LP method weren't just ideas, they were the pieces of a master plan. Harold finally confessed he saw it all coming. Hell, he even predicted how Tasuku would react from the very start. Tasuku snapped up the offer like it was fate, then couldn't shake the thought: why was Harold really helping the Sumeragi family? Harold brushed the question aside, insisting nobody, Tasuku included, could ever truly make sense of his reasons. He laid down a hard ultimatum. Tasuku had to break his engagement with his daughter, Erica Sumeragi. Tasuku spotted Harold's LP farming method and realized it matched the exact industrial trick the letter described. Harold's smug, measured smirk sealed it. Tashuku instantly understood that Harold had already mapped out the entire negotiation from start to finish. Tasuku felt it all crash into place. Erika's life, the family's honor, and the fate of every citizen hung entirely on Harold's word. With sheer determination, Tasuku took Harold's daring proposal, saw the brilliance in it, and staked everything on the promise of his daughter's future. Harold praised his own call, then snapped into action, ordering the crews to ready the fields and train everyone for the LP method rollout. Harold leaned forward and said they needed a discreet, long-range company to protect the technique and secure its future growth. Tasuku got the whole strategy, blown away by Harold's razor-sharp foresight and his genius for planning long-term scalability. He leaned in and asked if Harold needed anything else, and Harold froze, totally thrown off by how real and sincere it sounded. Tasuku promised full support, and Harold just froze, staring with wide eyes, stunned into silence by the sheer trust in front of him. Harold demanded a ruthless mentor, swearing he'd earn real combat experience, no matter what, while staying at Sumeragi. Harold sank into the Sumeragi bath and finally let the world go quiet, savoring a rare breath of peace miles from his furious, tense homeland. With his recent wins pumping him up, Harold replayed his alliances, mapped out his next sparring plans, and grinned at how much stronger his strategic position had gotten. The evening slid in quietly, and a bunch of people didn't have a clue that an urgent meeting was already unfolding right nearby. Uno NELT stood before the elders, ready to deliver the results he gathered under Erika's quiet orders. Uno spoke in a calm, unshakable tone, and then announced she'd been watching Harold for the long haul, and the tension in the room snapped tight like a wire. Erika snapped to her father and apologized for unleashing spies, because some gut pull had her chasing one truth she absolutely had to verify. She brought up a sickening rumor, then Harold snapped, murdering a servant and a child. Erika's father admitted the rumor was floating around, but Erika hit back with proof that it could all be a total lie. Erika demanded more bulletproof details, then Uno cracked down and proved the claims were wrong after digging into the case. Uno finally exposed the truth: those dead, too, were alive and thriving in Blush Village, guarded by new protectors. Uno told everyone that Clara never changed her name, and the villagers snapped into action, tracking her down fast. Even though he found her right away, the woman clammed up she wouldn't touch the past, staying cold, distant, and stone silent. Uno stormed straight to the woman's place, and Clara opened the door, eyes sharp, instincts screaming, because she didn't trust the visitor one bit. She greeted her politely and confirmed Clara's fears. This question was all about Harold and the old, unresolved trouble that never got settled. You heard it. Harold spilled the news about his engagement to Erika, and then rumors hit like a bomb, whipping the Sumeragi family into fierce opposition. Clara finally broke, rushing forward with tears in her eyes. Harold's name still crushed her heart. Uno didn't panic. She steadied Clara and told her the truth. Harold never shut those rumors down, and he even took the blame, all because Clara survived. Harold swallowed the citizens' hatred and even confessed to crimes he didn't commit, standing cool on the outside while his insides were getting crushed by it. Uno pushed Clara to spill the truth in private, with her support close by, and that's how Harold's redemption could finally start, low-key and unstoppable. Tears burned at Clara's eyes as Harold's silent torment finally crashed into her heart. No words needed. Clara cracked open, beating herself up, and Harold's crushing silence finally caved her in. Uno softly acknowledged Clara's pain, then reassured her. She knew exactly why she hesitated and why guilt clung so hard to her. Uno told Harold and Erika she'd help them no matter how brutal the truth got. Clara swallowed her doubts, pushed the door open, and invited Uno in, because the time for silence was officially over. She found her courage and finally stopped being passive. With a fierce vow, she promised to protect Harold in her own way. Uno put Clara and her daughter on the table for real. Then Colette somehow gave it a strange opening that let Erika stumble onto the truth. Meanwhile, Harold wrestled with the town's toughest kids while Uno watched closely from just around the corner. Their eyes locked for one brutal second, and both of them froze, trapped in an awkward silence, staring like the universe just pulled off a prank. Harold snapped back with a sharp, silent irritation, totally unmoved by her sudden appearance. then Yu nervously forced a smile. Without a single word, Harold spun away, leaving Yuno frozen on the spot, painfully realizing he'd just completely shut her out. Harold couldn't crack his huge coin, so at the shop, buying sweets turned into a full-on disaster. Rage bubbling in his chest, he waved over more kids and with a generous grin, let each one pick 10 items for free. Uno snapped that Harold was lost and promised candy to every kid willing to point the way. She realized it wasn't suspicious at all. Harold, completely worn out, finally let the kids choose whatever they wanted. Harold shrugged off the cost like it didn't matter, and kids erupted into cheers while the shopkeeper's grin widened. Yeah, everyone could see you couldn't help but quietly admire his generosity. A kid proudly shoved candy into Harold's hands, but he snapped it away in annoyance, refusing the sweet just to dodge any gratitude he didn't ask for. Her face fell the moment she saw it. She panicked that she'd upset him, burst into a tearful apology, and clutched the candy like it could fix everything. Harold crept along in silence, scarfed down the treat with zero complaints, and then, boom, her eyes lit up with sudden joy. He stumbled, trying to speak like it wasn't a big deal, and when he finally accepted her words, her face lit up. She was absolutely thrilled. In that instant, the stern mask cracked wide open. Then a gentle hug wrapped around Harold, melting his hardness right in front of everyone. Harold snapped at the kids for their reckless stunt, barking for them to sit down right now. He fired off a stern lecture about safety and responsibility, and Yuno stared at him, shocked by how much he actually cared. She teased Harold about his generosity, and Harold shot it down fast, claiming the kid was selfish. He sneered at their tastes like they were childish, puffed himself up with pride, and dodged every chance to feel close. Juno stepped back with a shaky smile, secretly entertained by how stubborn he was, and the moment Harold got pressed, he bristled like he'd been attacked. Harold huffed under his breath and marched ahead in total silence, letting his pride hide the care he couldn't stop. Yuno smiled softly like she'd finally understood. Harold's actions were shouting louder than his words, so she sprinted to catch up. After she maimed Harold, they sentenced her to die, yet he snuck past it by faking the execution. Harold secretly masterminded her escape, then handed her shelter, supplies, and a brand new life, one where she could finally stand tall with dignity. Uno realized Harold swallowed disgrace on purpose, just to mask the escape, because he was willing to do anything to protect his mother and daughter. Erica, still blind to the truth, tried to slip away, confusion crashing down on her as her father's call played in her ears. She blurted out that she didn't know, crushed herself with guilt, and begged to apologize to Harold for the hurt she caused. Right as Erica geared up to apologize, Toshuku slammed into the moment and stopped her cold, warning that spilling the truth could ignite serious consequences. He broke down Harold's sacrifice, begging for silence so nobody would accidentally betray him again and trap Harold even more alone. Erica was hit with crushing guilt. She knew her apology could blow up everything Harold fought to keep safe. Tasuku pressed her, asking if she wanted to apologize because regret burned inside her, or because it was just easier for her to feel comfortable. Erica couldn't move or act, so her world crumbled and she broke down in tears, begging, "Tell me, what am I supposed to do instead?" Tasuku carefully steered Erica forward, handing her a fresh roll, not to repent, but to stand by Harold and help him carry on. Erica, you reminded her, she still won't chase forgiveness, and she'll force herself to finally understand Harold's crushing burden and get even closer to him. Tasuku pushed her to study Harold's goals up close, insisting that only then could she truly understand him. He praised Harold's brilliance and feared even his fiancée might never truly break through to his heart. Even if Erica would never be fully seen, she still chose to stay right there beside Harold, silent and loyal. Toshuku leaned in and asked Erica if she had the grit to keep following Harold, no matter what storm was coming next. He told her to hold off on any decisions and to keep a sharp eye on Harold before she dared choose her path. Erica slipped out of the room in silence, and her gentle, softly spoken yes still carried ironclad determination. Tasuku let out a soft laugh, then understood it wasn't disappointment in his daughter's eyes. It was the sharp ache of growing up. As Erica locked eyes on the horizon, her father grinned because he could feel it. Her heart had already picked him. Harold stormed into the temple with Tasuku and Erica, totally clueless about the brutal trial waiting right around the corner. They stormed into Sumeraji's grand martial arts temple, where a sea of students sharpened their combat skills and their magic until every breath felt like a challenge. Harold immediately grilled Erica about why she was there, stunned she even got dragged into it, yet Tasuku waved it off like it was nothing. Even though Harold couldn't figure out why, he still let her stay. He swallowed his questions and didn't resist. Harold, fully geared for war, barked for his challenger. Then his eyes locked on the lone figure waiting there, the swordsman Itsuki. Itsuki's face lit up when he spotted Erika. He sprinted to hug her right in the middle of training and totally forgot Harold was standing right there, silently watching. Itsuki showered Erika with non-stop affection, yapping without a break as he crushed her in a tight, way too excited hug. When Harold finally saw them reunite, his head spun with confusion. There was no way this overly sweet, overly friendly kid was really supposed to be the one who'd fight him. Itsuki dismissed Harold's age with a laugh, but Harold snapped back hard, reminding him they both still looked like kids. Itsuki introduced himself as Erika's brother, then Harold, stunned, answered back with a chilling, "I'm Harold Stokes." Itsuki snatched Harold's shoulder and blurted his name like a firecracker, while Erika's fiancé crackled with non-stop, overflowing energy. With dramatic flair, Itsuki blurted out that Harold was worthy of his amazing little sister, his eyes blazing with pure passion. Even with Harold protesting, Itsuki beamed and smothered him in affectionate squeezes, and the crowd erupted in laughter and deep, happy sighs. News of the duel tore through the halls, and students sprinted downstairs, hungry to catch the wild, unexpected sword match. Excitement crackled in the dojo as Itsuki rang out, and Harold dropped into position before the crowd. Itsuki fired off the challenge, furious at the provocation, then gritted through the struggle and agreed as the weapons were snapped into readiness. As Erika thrust a bamboo sword into his hands, Harold couldn't help but clock Itsuki's weirdly bright cheer and his way too soft affection toward Erika. The Harold clocked it. Itsuki, barely a blip in-game, wasn't just unpredictable. She wore a grin, stood fearless, and somehow stayed tightly woven into Erika's entire life. Harold Sade caught on that Itsuki was suffocating him with overprotectiveness, then still took the practice sword, already bracing for the match to hit like a storm. They traded lightning-fast moves, mocked the bamboo weapon with cold indifference, and went in on technique alone. Harold doubted his own strength, and the way he remembered past fights made this feel wrong, because the weapon in his hand suddenly seemed way too light. Trainees packed the stands, and the instant Harold caught sight of the crowd, pressure slammed into the duel like a brick. His comms snapped. Even though Itsuki never showed up in the original game, the devs picked him on purpose, because he's anything but ordinary. Harold remembered the power he used to wield, and even though he was bound right now, he knew this body still had lightning left in it. For days, Harold trained by himself, mastering every move until he could control that body with razor-sharp precision. After the rules hit the air, Harold clenched his weapon with white-knuckled fury, vowing in silence that he would never fall. The duel had no timer, only one thing mattered: make your opponent drop or have them surrender without a fight. Toshuku, Erika's father, put safety first, and the two boys swallowed their nerves, agreeing to the terms with answers that sounded way too confident. Itsuki nodded along to the terms, trusting their father's call on Tsuku's decision to set up a fair fight. Since he'd already tangled with plenty of adult fighters, Itsuki knew he couldn't go all out against noble heirs like Harold. To balance the odds, then Itsuki calmly dropped the bomb. He'd give himself a handicap before he even started the fight. He offered Harold the opening strike, trying to feel just how deadly his younger opponent really was. With both fighters set, Tasuku shot his hand up and slammed the signal. He declared the duel officially started. Harold threw his first attack at full speed, but the moment Itsuki moved, his defense came so effortless it left Harold completely stunned. Tension snapped into the air, Harold's face tightened, while Itsuki stayed icy calm, getting himself ready to unleash the decisive counter. In the blink of an eye, weapons erupted through the air. Tasuku stared in shock, because no one could even make out what just happened. Harold stood there, breath catching as his strength stunned him, while Itsuki grinned and said he hadn't even gone all out yet. Even though that speed hit him like a shockwave, Harold steadied his breath, clamped his grip on his sword, and pushed forward with unshakable resolve. Itsuki snapped his move mid-strike, refused to score, and shouted at Harold to stop messing around and fight for real. Harold finally got it. Itsuki wasn't laughing at him at all. He was hunting for a rival worthy of his level, the same way Harold would. They sized each other up with brand new respect, and Harold demanded a straight-up, no-games serious match this time. With everything settled between them, Itsuki nodded without a flicker of doubt, because this duel was about to become the real showdown. Smirking with full confidence, they swapped places. This time, Itsuki lunged first, and Harold met the challenge head-on without flinching. Harold and Itsuki stared each other down in silence, and the tension snapped higher as their wooden swords rose inch by inch. Itsuki remembered his father's wish, clenched his teeth so hard it hurt, and surged forward with a resolve that felt stronger than ever. Harold exploded forward, way faster than anyone expected, and Itsuki's eyes went wide, completely blindsided by the rush. Steel collided with a brutal crack, then Itsuki saw it. Harold's blade work wasn't just faster, it was faster enough to leave him choking under an utterly overwhelming assault. Harold slammed the next strike in relentless, never once letting his aim slip. This wasn't sparring, it was a bold declaration delivered in steel. He lunged, but Itsuki snapped back with a precise counter, exposing Harold's shaky footing and busted posture in one clean strike. Steel crashed again and again. Itsuki saw every strike coming, reading Harold's rhythm like the battle had already been sketched on a map. Harold shoved with everything he had, but Itsuki's rhythm stayed rock solid, while everyone watched pressure crush down on Harold and only him. As Harold flinched at every little sound, his steps tightened and his once sharp agility started turning into something predictable. Even with all that speed, Harold had zero foresight. His sword skills looked promising, but he was still just a skilled amateur, not a true master. Itsuki's calm stare tracked Harold's every quick move, and somehow, experience started sprinting ahead of youth. Their blades slammed together again, both gasping, but Harold's defense crumbled as Itsuki pressed him with relentless, steady force. Harold staggered for a moment, and the crowd gasped as Itsuki surged forward, steady as ever, feeling the tide turn in real time. Itsuki flashed a smile and let his sword go mid-swing, and right then, Harold got trapped in a nasty bind. Harold's surprise escape flipped everything. Momentum snapped back to his side. It wasn't done, not even close. Itsuki just froze, eyes wide, stunned to the core. Harold surged forward in a blur, and Itsuki clocked the stance just a second too late, because that opening was bait from the very start. With ruthless timing, Harold snapped out a heavy palm strike, slipped right past the blade, and slammed into the center of his opponent's body. Itsuki stumbled backward, his breath getting knocked clean out of him, and the crowd gasped in stunned shock as he crumpled to the floor. Silence crashed in as Harold stood there, catching his breath in shaky quiet. Then Tasuku stepped in and slammed the match to a stop. Both boys stood apart, drained to the bone, no words traded, just raw, earned respect hanging between them. Itsuki sat there, frozen in silence, forced to swallow his defeat, and it stung even harder since the person who crushed him was 3 years younger. Even with pride still swelling in his chest, Itsuki straightened up. Then he praised Harold while a fiercer promise to level up sparked and burned brighter inside him. Harold mocked the contradiction. Victory had shattered the strict rules, and his smug smirk tried to hide the quiet regret simmering under his confidence. The crowd murmured in stunned disbelief. Harold had broken the rules, and still nobody could deny he was simply dominating everything in sight. Laughter shattered the tension. Itsuki knew real strength when he saw it, because a rival had stepped up, not an enemy. Itsuki's cheeks warmed with a shy blush, and the thought of Harold as both family and rival sparked a tangled mix of feelings that hit her like something sweet. Once again, Itsuki snapped and stomped away, cheeks blazing. Everyone else just watched, grinning because they finally got it. He didn't actually hate the teasing. Itsuki's cheer left Harold baffled, yet even with all that tension hanging in the air, the winners still reached out with real, warm kindness. Harold's brow tightened as frustration spiked. Then he swore he'd get better, because that surprise loss from an unexpected strike only sharpened his resolve. Alone before the spring view, Harold stood still. Defeat had stung him hard, but deep down, growth had already started. As Harold wandered by himself, he soaked up the town's calm silence. Then something felt brutally off. This world never belonged to him. Then he was reborn as Harold, and a destiny already scribbled in the margins clung to his fate. Tears spilled in silence, because even after winning, one brutal question still haunted me. Can I make it out of this story alive? Sorry, but right then, Erica burst into view, and the second she showed up, Harold's thoughts snapped back and his despair staggered. Harold stood under blooming trees, wondering what he was really meant to be, and as feelings surged inside him, he fought the tears like they were forbidden. A sudden voice ripped through the air and called his name. Harold snapped around, stunned, and couldn't even tell who was behind him. Erica stood peacefully beneath the blossoms, and the gap between them roared with the silence of regret. Erica sat by herself, replaying every mistake in her head, while the sting of that slap still haunted her. Itsuki pushed Erika to step up and play Harold's fiancée, because her silence right now would cut him deeper. Erika hesitated, stuck between fear and hope, because Harold's pain wasn't loud, it was buried, and his silence had been hiding those deeper, unseen wounds for years. Erika clenched her resolve and tore through the area, convinced that if she pushed hard enough, she'd reach him just in time. Finally, she caught him wiping tears from his eyes, and the hurt he'd been swallowing finally spilled into the open. She paused, and it all clicked. His power had pushed him away, and that same strength was wrapped in a quiet, lonely ache. Erika stood apart, voice trembling as she whispered to herself, had he always fought like that, never truly having anyone at his side? Erika remembered when Harold's strength felt unstoppable, until she finally understood it was just hiding his pain. Yeah, she got it. No one ever stood close enough to see Harold's hidden, fragile heart. For everyone else's sake, Harold swallowed his burdens in silence. His pride wasn't ego, it was armor. Her father's words hit like thunder. She had to truly support Harold, and she couldn't stop until she understood him inside and out. Even if she wasn't ready, Erika charged forward. No hesitation, no doubt, she stepped right beside him. Erika swallowed her fear in silence and swore that one day she'd grow strong enough to shoulder Harold's secret burdens for him. Even without a clue about swords, she praised him with real sincerity, because she could still feel Harold's unmatched strength and unbreakable resolve. Even as Harold shot down compliments with sarcasm, Erika's warmth melted his pride before he could stop it. Her smile threw him off. Was she hiding a motive, or was she genuinely kind, even with everything that had happened between them? He fought off attachment, terrified that vulnerability would swallow him again, because her closeness rattled him and he refused to fall into dependence once more. Harold tried once more to shove her off, insisting that time was running out and that her feelings were just messy distractions he couldn't afford. Erika stood her ground, ice calm and locked in, demanding just one thing, an honest moment. Harold hesitated. Erika swallowed her pride and sincerely apologized, finally facing the blunder from her past with quiet, humble honesty. Bowing so low her hair nearly brushed the floor, Erika took the blame without flinching, owning her rage, her cruel insults, and every action she'd chosen. Harris scoffed, Harold's smile cracking as surprise hit. Yet even as her words cut deep, he shoved it all back onto himself for provoking her on purpose. He admitted it. Erika could humble herself like it was nothing, and that rare kind of vulnerability, it made her downright admirable. Her bow, filled with real sincerity, hit Harold like a wave, her kindness suddenly aimed right at him. Fear crashed through him as her warmth pressed too close, and he snapped back on instinct, smashing through his own defenses. Harold tore into her with brutal words, insisting her kindness was nothing but a deceitful mask. Rage exploded in Harold. He rejected her with a cruelty that hid his heartbreak. But Erika stood her ground, quietly taking every harsh word like a shield. They just stood there in stunned silence. No words came after that storm, only heavy breaths and bowed heads. As they strode off, Harold's thoughts hit like a punch. He'd pushed it too far, blaming her unfairly. Erika stared up at the sky, her heart sinking as Harold's rage kept roaring in her mind. She froze and doubted herself. Was she just too soft, too weak to face the brutal truth head-on? Erika clenched her resolve. She'd grow, push through, watch closely, and keep believing, even when no one thanked her and even when rejection slammed the door in her face. Erika just knew that if she trained hard enough, she'd stop trailing behind Harold and stride right beside him. She never thought he'd actually wait for her, but she'd chase him down and catch up, no matter what. With steel in her gaze, she swore Harold would never have to fight his battles alone again. Harold jolted awake, staring at a ceiling that felt way too familiar, yet somehow wrong. Was he slipping back into another dream? Then he stepped outside and froze because he'd just landed at the Sumeragi estate, a calm stretch of peace after all that chaos. Harold stitched together scraps of memory, praying he'd made it back to Japan, yet something about reality felt horribly wrong. Erika stood on the veranda, tense as a wire, staring at Harold, her only thought screaming, how badly is he hurt? But the elders double-checked Harold's nightmare, fever raging, swelling, fractures everywhere, and they said he finally needed rest, yet he'd already lived through something absolutely savage. Morning broke and Erika's courage surged back. She'd confront Harold, but only once he was completely healed. Erika paused mid-hand, stared at her with dead serious eyes, and gently begged for one quiet favor: just let everything stay calm. Erika stood her ground, pushed Yuno to master healing magic, and made it clear She'd do anything to shield the one person she cared about most. Elsewhere, Harold replayed his fight in his head. He'd won, but the sting proved one thing: his limits weren't gone. Erica snatched up heavy books on healing, even with the challenge staring her down, and got ready to dive into her studies. Some folks still questioned Erica's devotion, and jealousy plus resentment flared up in their hearts, convinced her feelings were nothing but pointless. Even with cruel words aimed at her, Erica stood her ground. She would never let herself feel helpless, not if Harold ever needed her. Harold and Erica locked eyes and made the same silent vow: no matter what hit them, they'd get stronger. The soldiers locked onto a looming threat on Bina Plateau, and the command was ice cold: flank it, don't rush in. Wounded soldiers erupted into panic, yelling for a retreat while everyone else stalled. Then fear and swirling confusion crushed the command for good. Harold Stokes slipped onto the battlefield, quiet, 13, cool as ice, eyes locked in, and the whole scene shifted the moment he showed up. A monstrous beast burst out and roared like the end of the world, and Harold didn't flinch. He planted his feet, then drew his sword with deadly precision. Harold kept his eyes locked on the charging beast, bracing to strike back with pure instinct instead of brute force. He burst forward without a second thought, ducking under its reach and slamming the beast before it even had time to react. Harold sliced through the beast's horn with surgical precision, then calmly told them to save it. There was usable material there. Right when relief was starting to hit, the sky cracked again. Another monster burst through, and the knight's courage shattered as dark magical energy swelled, threatening to explode. The beast unleashed a terrifying spell called *Ground Punisher*, and the ground beneath their feet cracked with brutal power. With debris blasting through the air, Harold stood his ground, untouched, staring down the magical destruction like it couldn't scare him. Harold sprinted over jagged ground, eyes blazing ahead, while a horned beast creature hunted him down without mercy. The enemy swooped down from above, and Harold braced for the counter, shutting out its taunts and the smug confidence oozing off it. With thunder ripping the sky, he unleashed his finishing move, Thunderbird, an earth-shattering hit that ended the beast for good. The monster crumpled in an instant, and the soldiers just gaped. Stunt him wiped out an intermediate-class hornhead monster by himself. Harold barked razor-sharp orders, and the soldiers scattered, scrambling to get rid of the beast, terrified of his icy command. Soldiers huddled and dissected Harold's past, stunned by how brutal his strength was, and how fast he climbed through every battle experience. Harold's noble blood turned every move into a hot-button gamble, because one wrong injury could shatter the Stokes family's whole future stability. Even with danger closing in, his unmatched power won everyone over, and once he proved he could handle it, they handed him the leadership role. Sitting there in silence, Harold swallowed their doubts, because he'd learned the hard way that experience always speaks louder than any words. 3 years back, Harold staggered home all torn up. His comrades hauled him in, yelling for help while the rain smashed down on them. You know it, the second Harold burst back in, he came staggered and bloodied, ripped up by a monster on their campaign. Panic tore through the scene, soldiers swore it was Harold who shielded them, then a healer rushed in as guilt hung heavy over everyone. Harold, even with his wounds blazing, snapped at them with hard fury, refusing pity and demanding strength, not regret. Pride and frustration ignited in his chest as everyone stared on, frozen and silent, and then he brushed off their apologies like they meant nothing. He shut down the whole incident, terrified of how his parents would react, and when the others finally scattered, they were left staring at their own weakness, burning with shame. Harold's sacrifice slammed into his mind, and he realized protection came with brutal pain, so he swore to press on, aching for strength. Right before Harold's carriage rolled in, Resolute vowed to level up, grit blazing in his voice, so the nearby soldiers wouldn't catch his resolve. In the carriage, Harold sat in silence, letting experience harden his resolve, determined to keep his allies safe from harm. Harold stared ahead into the monsters, weighing every danger those soldiers faced, and grilled Tasuku about how far he'd gotten and why he was keeping it so secret. Staring out at the distant horizons, Harold couldn't shake the idea of heading to the Sumeragi estate. He craved power, the right allies, and the answers he absolutely needed. Harold stood at the gate of the estate, eyes blazing with determination as he braced himself for the big talks ahead. Tasuku lit up with a warm greeting for Harold, praising his hard work and pressing him for news on the negotiations with Hayden's family. Harold laid it out with total confidence. Fees dropped, reimbursements came through, and he even managed to spread the LP farming method like wildfire. He flashed a sly smirk like he already had something bigger up his sleeve, while Tasuku weighed alliances around Harold's shaky engagement. By the river, Tasuku clenched his worry for Harold's injuries, the memories of countless battles, won through reckless resolve, crashing back into his mind. Harold snapped out a fearless vow, swearing he'd never bow to weakness, and Tasuku couldn't help but stare, praising his grit and likening him to Itsuki. He pitched Harold on joining the upcoming combat tournament at Delphi, framing it as his proposal. Harold listened closely and realized this tournament would sharpen his skills for real without getting him killed like those brutal battles outside. A wicked grin cracked across his face and he snapped up the challenge like it was nothing, totally sure he'd crush it. With a grim stare and no one beside him, he admitted the real monsters were coming next, and decided this tournament had to be his make-or-break stepping stone. Harold chewed on the strain between him and Erika, staying guarded as he battled the looming dangers closing in. Clenching his fist, Harold swore he'd wipe out every death flag before the main story even got rolling. The busy ocean town, DFIT, erupted with energy. Giant ships loomed overhead and brand new buildings wowed every newcomer. Liner Griffith couldn't stop grinning at the sights, while Colette Ameler snapped at him for overreacting so hard it embarrassed him. Even with Colette's furious protests, Liner barreled forward with unstoppable excitement, desperate to uncover what waited for them after they finally left their countryside home behind. Colette had to sprint in and snag him before registration finished, because the moment the bell rang, his energy would have blown the whole plan wide open. Colette tore through the packed streets, seething at Liner's reckless stunt, until her foot snagged and she crashed hard to the ground. With an apology spilling out in a blink, she braced for a stranger's scolding. Then a warm, kind soul stepped in, offering gentle concern like a lifeline. Erika Sumeragi glided into view so gracefully that Colette froze in awe, stunned not just by her beauty, but by the kindness pouring off her. She clocked Colette's injury and rushed in to help, but Colette's face flared red with nerves. She couldn't even focus while Erika's stunning presence hit her like a wave. Erika gladly pushed forward to help, and Colette shyly introduced herself with a bright smile, moved to the bone by Erika's honest sincerity. Her gentle gaze locked onto Colette and she could feel it, determination buried under every trembling breath. Erika clutched her scraped knee while casting magic, showing off real skill, and even admitting she wasn't all that confident to begin with. Colette totally misread the moment and thought Erika was entering the tournament, but Erika instantly shut it down and made it clear she was there as the escort. Art watched Colette beam warmly as she revealed her burning dream, to stand beside her friends and help them reach the chivalric order. Erika cheered Colette's friend's dream to the skies, and Colette shot back with pride, calling his strength in Blanche Village unmatched. 3 years ago, Colette laid out her plan for Blush Village, and Erika quietly nodded, confirming everyone's suspicions. Erika muttered under her breath, admitting she'd expected this, only Colette didn't hear her quiet moment of recognition. Even with gratitude in her eyes, Colette tried to pay her back, but Erika shook her head and gently pushed her to go back, telling her to rejoin her friends. With a soft smile, Erika boldly asked for friendship the moment they met again, and that small request lit a bright, hopeful bond between them. Erika leaned in and asked Colette to be friends, and Colette's nerves spiraled as she doubted she even deserved it. Through the storm of illness, Erika soothed her with a gentle voice, promising that when fate finally brought them back together, their bond would shine for everyone to see. Right as Erika geared up to leave, Colette blurted out her heartfelt wish. She prayed she'd get to see Erika again. Erika flashed a warm smile and glided out with pure elegance, while Colette was left behind, buzzing with admiration and a rush of heartfelt emotion. Blushing deep, Colette clutched her chest and soaked up the moment. Erika's kindness and grace hit her straight in the heart. Harold brooded in the grand hall, restless to the bone, and he could feel trouble creeping in way sooner than anyone expected. Itsuki burst in grinning, basically inviting them to eat together, while Harold's discomfort quietly kept swelling inside him. They rushed up to the table and Erika nearly choked, stunned that they'd shown up out of nowhere with zero warning. Harold's mind sprinted the moment he saw Erika there, because this was the last place he expected her, especially after Itsuki had pushed them to sit down and eat together. Harold's chest tightened with indecision. Staying would trap him in awkward silence with Erika, but leaving would thrust him into a fight where he'd have to defend everyone around them. Itsuki told everyone Harold needed healing help for the tournament, and that basically left Erika as the only choice. Erika brought up the old promises, but Itsuki wouldn't budge, and Harold's patience snapped as he realized the whole mess was being rigged. At dinner, Itsuki figured the meeting was unavoidable, and Harold grudgingly swallowed his pride as he admitted his brother-in-law's point made perfect sense. Later, Erika ran into Yuno, who hit her with the reminder that the deal broke the old secrecy rules about Harold's involvement. Erika finally confessed she'd been hiding details like her secret run-in with Colette, so Harold still had no clue and still stood exposed. She made up her mind to guard Harold's secret with her life, because she knew they had to stay completely clueless about Colette's survival. Erika stared out the window in silence and clamped down her questions, refusing to press Harold until he finally spilled the truth. Erika stared at Harold's secret side, convinced that once he fully trusted her, her allies would finally come through. She pictured some other woman bumping into Harold again, stealing his attention, maybe even his heart, and then her hands started to shake, gripping tighter and tighter. With a gentle smile, Erika swallowed the sting of an even fiercer love rivalry and braced herself, ready to meet whatever future Harold's next move throws at her. Harold stormed into the massive arena, struck by its scale but wired with tension, because the combat tournament was waiting for him tomorrow. As Harold pushed through the bustling streets, he spotted tavern fights erupting and drunken trouble spilling out, turning the whole area into a reckless brawl. A kid nearly got caught in the chaos, but Harold snapped into action and slammed the situation to a stop before a single person got hurt. With pinpoint power, Harold crushed the thugs in an instant, so brutal and clean that even the fighters and the crowd went silent in shock. Crowds packed together, jittery to the core, then Harold fired off savage barbs about the aggressor's drunken mess, and his icy words snapped the tension back into order. A drunken thug shoved his threats at Harold, swaggering like he'd never pull his punches, even if the target was just a kid. The Cody unit of the Royal Chivalric Order rolled up, sizing up the full-blown wreckage those drunks had unleashed. That thug lunged in blind fury, but Harold snapped into action so fast it left the knights staring, stunned by how quick he was. With razor-sharp timing, Harold snapped back, dropped the man in an instant, and left the whole crowd staring in pure shock. Silence crashed for a second, then applause detonated. Harold didn't even flinch, and the knight just nodded, stunned by that brutal, overwhelming power. A knight praised Harold's skills, stared in sheer shock, then leaned in and politely demanded an explanation for what had just happened. Harold brushed it off, saying it was just drunks brawling, and swooped in only because he wanted to stop the mess before it blew up. Harold brushed aside your concern with a cold sneer, saying your opponent wasn't even worth warming up for. With the lieutenant frozen in thought, they realized Harold had already vanished, slipping out under their radar without a single soul noticing. After everything, the knight kicked himself for forgetting to ask Harold's name, because that mysterious kid still left him on edge. Harold froze in shock when Cody and Luziel, game characters, suddenly stumbled into this timeline. Cody, the Friary mercenaries leader, kept swinging between helping the protagonist's crew and using them for his own gain. Group Harold stared at the floor, drowning in regret, wishing he'd grabbed his chance with Cody sooner, because that friendship could have handed him the crucial knowledge he needed about Liner's group. At the arena, Itsuki beamed and unveiled Harold's tournament entry, hiding it under an alias to keep everything secret. The Herald nodded with calm control, because hiding his identity kept nobles from rising up and stop him from getting recognized. Harold strode into the arena as Mr. Lord, seething that Itsuki had cooked up an alias and a disguise plan. Itsuki chuckled, claiming the mask would keep Harold's identity safe, but Harold seethed, furious over the humiliation. Crowds thundered with cheers, "Lord, Lord," while Harold fumed at Itsuki's chaos and power-walked through the humiliation of that disguise Harold. Harold glared at Itsuki, promising himself he'd never forget this trick, while his opponents froze, intimidated by the sheer force of him. Fed up to the bone, Harold pushed to end the match fast, determined to slip away unnoticed right after. Harold said nothing, then he spotted Colette in the crowd, and both of them froze in an instant. Harold stepped into the arena, clueless as Colette watched from the crowd, her heart thundering with worry. Harold instantly regretted unmasking. Colette's sudden presence rattled him to the core, and he couldn't stop wondering if she'd already glimpsed the real him. Seeing Colette there meant trouble, and Harold snapped tense as the announcer's voice cut through, then the battle erupted. His opponent swung first, and Harold snapped into action, blade slamming against blade with brutal force as he fought tooth and nail just to keep the upper hand. Harold disarmed him in one smooth move. Colette gasped, the opponent dropped his guard and surrendered, then Harold just stood there victorious but far from peaceful. He slips out of the arena and a sickening thought hits, Colette is here, so he's definitely coming. Just like they feared, Liner Griffith finally shows up, the one and only destined hero. Harold panics, but their duel hasn't been set yet. Harold bolts away fast, praying Liner stays out of the action, and just like that, the next match is already announced. The crowd erupts in cheers as Liner strides onto the Coliseum stage, and everyone hears his name and where he's from echoing through the air. Harold freezes in place. Liner wasn't supposed to be here at all. Something wrecked the game's timeline. He freezes for a second, tempted to just forfeit, then the truth hits, skipping the Liner could drag him into something even worse. He remembers Clara's fate from the original story, and that's the exact reason the Liner comes for him, pure hatred blazing. With Clara safe and no reason to spark hatred, Harold readjusted his Liner like he was weighing a dangerous new plan. Maybe she had to be an ally. He fires up a master plan, tests his options, gauges his own strength, and shapes his growth from the very start. Harold's determined eyes lock onto a rare opening. He grabs it, twists fate on the spot, and forges stronger heroes, rewriting the entire story from the inside. Liner crushes his opponent and the crowd erupts, while Harold stands there watching closely, already plotting his next strike. Harold wrestles with the perfect way to greet the Liner without setting him off, and awkward lines spiral through his head like they're trying to save him last second. Despite all the careful planning, Harold wastes no time. He greets Liner with blunt sarcasm and snaps, redhead, right to his face. Liner whips around, locked eyes with Harold, his face a total mystery, as Harold studies whether Liner might snap, ready to react. Harold's jaw drops, then the Liner lights up, thrilled, impressed, and desperate to soak up everything he teaches. Liner can't contain his excitement. He blurts out training tips while crashing into Harold's space, and Harold scrambles to deal with the sudden wave of energy. Liner shrugs it off with a laugh and offers his hand, grinning like it's nothing. Then Harold, rattled and flustered, snaps back with cutting, harsh words. Harold freezes, shocked by Liner's raw honesty. Then, with his eyes still locked on him, he slowly takes the handshake. Harold introduces himself bluntly, laser-like confidence blazing as Liner beams flash, unshaken, unbothered, and then this strange, promising connection starts forming in silence. Later, Liner gets hit with teasing praise from everyone, and when he blurts out his cheerful thanks, Harold's like, "I didn't see that coming," and the respect he earns lands hard. Harold dares Liner to win the secret on pure strength, no favors, no shortcuts, and Liner practically leaps at the challenge. He scrimmed anyway, then he boldly taunts the Liners, carving a sharp line between their strength and his status for now. Liner isn't getting discouraged. He flashes a determined grin, then walks off and promises they'll run it back for a rematch soon. Harold catches the onlookers' irritation instantly. Whatever they're saying is so intense it's already pulling way too much attention. Still, Harold can't wipe the grin off his face. Standing right in front of the future hero makes every risky step feel worth it. Harold clutched his sword tight, his calm eyes blazing with determination as the tournament crowd leaned in, hungry for what came next. The arena screamed with pure hype as Harold stepped up to face Liner Griffith, his division's chosen rival, and the moment everyone waited for. And there, swallowed by the roaring cheers, Colette stood silent, her anxious face screaming that she was worried about every fighter in the ring. Facing the line, Harold braced himself, suddenly feeling that double burden pressing far past pride or any childhood promise. The referee's whistle screamed, the Liner shot forward in a blur, and Harold braced for his final, game-changing counterattack. Liner lunged in with brutal strikes, but Harold stayed ice cold, snapping every hit aside like it was nothing. Their blades slammed together with bone-jarring force, sparks spraying out as Harold's razor-precise strikes proved he was way more skilled than anyone ever expected. Harold stood there in silence, his doubts screaming, could this reckless kid really ever save anyone? Frustration flared as Liner swung wild, but Harold slipped every hit with ease, and the restless crowd started booing for him to lose control. Harold's icy words finally slashed through like a blade, brushing Liner's every effort aside as completely worthless. Harold planted his feet and spoke coolly, calling Liner's efforts a waste, then swatted away every strike like it was nothing. In a sudden blur, Harold's eyes snapped sharp, and his blade sliced through the air with terrifying precision. He declared his dominance with zero doubt, flashing the point to Liner that terrifying power could be unleashed anytime he wanted. Harold's strike slammed into Liner and rattled him, because even those practiced swords still hit with a brutal, terrifying force. Harold's piercing words hit Liner like a hammer. He trembled with shame, furious at his own weakness, and left reeling from that brutal judgment. Liner clenched his fists, the memory of brutal training snapping back, rage flaring because, before Harold's power, it all felt pointless. Even after a mountain of wins over his rivals, Harold's calm swagger shut him down, crushing every last victory until it all felt empty. The referee shot his hand up and declared Harold the winner, and the crowd nearly exploded at how brutally the fight ended. Panting hard, Liner snapped his gaze up, shattered, lost, and defeated, as Harold's crushing power pinned him in place, too overwhelming to even process. Harold shot the referee a cold stare, demanding to know why the match ended, without Lincoln ever formally conceding defeat. The referee froze, saying the Liner's weapon was busted, but Harold snapped at him, "Swap it for another." Harold snatched the replacement sword with pure intimidation, and everyone snapped to obedience fast, because fear hit them like a punch. Harold rushed back into the arena, hurled his blade at Liner, and instantly the crowd exploded with anticipation. With a bossy, in-your-face tone, Harold dared Liner to keep going, demanding proof that he'd truly fight. Harold planted his feet, squared up to the Liner, and ordered him to keep swinging. Then he set another sword in front of him like a warning. Harold's sharp eyes locked on him, and he demanded to know why Liner wanted power, digging into the real reason beneath it. Then Liner's mind snapped back to his dream, becoming a knight, and he pictured himself charging in to save countless innocent lives. Old memories snapped back. Those childhood bullies swiped the pendant, and their cruel taunts still rang out while Colette begged, trapped, and powerless. Colette's pendant got laughed at and threatened for sale as she shook in terror, clinging to Liner's protection like her life depended on it. She fought back with courage, but the bullies struck harder, crushing her resistance with brutal, relentless force. She sobbed and fought her way free, screaming for help and praying that the Liner would finally show up and shield her. Liner stumbled in, shaking yet unbreakable, convinced today would finally be different as the bullies closed in. Still beaten down, he wrapped his Liner shield around Colette, rage and guilt crashing over him as he blamed himself, then refused, no matter what, to ever leave her side. Even with his injuries screaming in pain, Liner grinned and handed Colette back her pendant, proving his courage and loyalty hadn't broken a bit. He swore on his life to protect Colette, vowing he'd train without sleep until he finally earned the title of a true knight. She stayed silent, yet her heart raced as she gently called Liner's name, full of trust and pure admiration. She pressed her pendant into his hands, swearing it was proof of knighthood, and placing her safety in his care like a vow. With a warm smile, Colette decided to follow Liner as he chased his dream with unstoppable determination. Fueled by his memories and Colette's unwavering belief, he clamped his hand around the sword, tight, steady, and ready to rise again. Liner dug in his heels, swore he'd shield everyone, and understood he had to break every limit to do it. Harold didn't buy it. He snapped that without real strength, all the grit in the world is useless, and he mocked his heroic resolve like it was just hot air. Power ripped through the Liner, and suddenly his body felt lighter, his aura roaring as raw determination turned into unstoppable strength. Breathing in hope, Liner surged ahead, convinced he could finally stand toe-to-toe with Harold. Then his spirit erupted and pure confidence blazed from him. Their swords slammed together again, and the arena shook as Liner's renewed power and grit surged through the air. The fight exploded in intensity. Sparks blasted into the air as Harold and Liner's blades crashed together, making the crowd gasp in shock. Colette gasped, eyes wide at the sheer strength of his Liner. Then she finally saw it, pure determination blazing through. Liner slammed in a brutal strike, smashing Harold back, but Harold stayed cool, deflecting it with ease and snapping him out of his arrogance. Exhausted but unbroken, the Liner lunged ahead, refusing to quit as he battled tooth and nail against Harold's crushing strength. Suddenly, that new power vanished, his body dropped back to heavy weakness, and he staggered mid-battle, dazed and completely confused. Exhausted, Liner finally swallowed his pride and admitted it. He'd fought someone tougher than ever, and it still wasn't enough. Harold stood his ground as the Liner bowed, admitting defeat. Then the pendant slipped right out of his grasp. When the pendant slipped from his grasp, Liner snapped back to his promise, chase his dreams and stand between danger and Colette. Her bright smile lit a fire in his chest, reminding him he had to keep fighting, no matter what. Power blasted out from the Liner again, and Harold and everyone in the crowd went wide-eyed, while pure determination slammed back into place. Liner braced for his last strike, pouring every last bit of strength he had into it. With a cold, unshakable resolve, his attack exploded forward like a roar, bursts of energy flames tearing through the air and daring Harold to hold his ground. Harold stayed ice calm, called forth his deadliest move, the Nemesis Blade, and blasted the world with cutting energy so relentless it felt unstoppable. The moment they collided, the whole arena screamed, energy waves blasted the ground, and the crowd got shoved back, terrified. Exhausted, Harold caught the liner as it collapsed into his arms, shocked by the raw strength of his opponent, and even more impressed by the sheer grit driving him forward. Harold snaps at Liner like a fool, screaming that his recklessness backfired by unleashing hidden strength way too late. Liner slams into Harold, and Harold nods, admitting the boy's sheer resilience, even as his reckless drive keeps getting him into trouble. Harold sinks into thought about Brave Mode, replaying exactly how it activates, and how the liners somehow keep it going longer than anyone expected. Finally, he swallows his pride and admits respect for Liner, because he's seen the kid's real potential and growth, even after he'd called him a disappointment before. Harold stood victorious in the arena, his calm face barely concealing the insane power he'd just unleashed. The crowd exploded into disbelief, and when a spectator finally called out Harold's strength, reality hit. He wasn't ordinary anymore. Meanwhile, Colette shoved through the packed crowd like her life depended on it, determined to get to Harold after seeing his shocking win. She stumbled into the hall, almost face-planting, and her eyes snapped to Harold's silent figure standing up ahead. Finally, their eyes locked. Colette gasped out Harold's name, shaking with awe, relief, and a storm of feelings she couldn't quite name. Harold snapped at Colette with ruthless honesty, drilling into her judgment as his cutting words shattered her shaky resolve. Colette fought to defend Liner tooth and nail, her voice shaking, yet Harold's questions still landed like a blade, digging deep inside her. Her determination ignited. She snapped that the liner's strength was real, and that he deserved real protection, even while Harold sneered. Harold shot down her defense with icy contempt, calling her weakness pointless, then turned away without a shred of care, letting her fragile hopes fall behind as his path split. As Harold stormed out, Colette steadied herself, swallowed the pain, and clung to pure resolve. She reminded herself she had to come back to the liner. Liner slowly blinked awake in the med bay, his body trembling with weakness as the sting of his defeat crashed back into his mind. When Colette sprinted to his side, relief slammed into him, but the shame from his loss still burned. She soothed him softly, swearing Harold spared him, but Liner's nerves screamed that something worse had already happened. Colette demanded yet again that he swear the Liner would keep her safe, even after today's crushing failure. She greeted him warmly, calling Harold master, while Line stared at him in silence, quietly wondering whether Colette truly understood Harold. Colette remembered Harold's kindness, and she even admitted that Liner's necklace came from him too, proof that he had nobility buried deep inside. Liner stared at Harold like he was unreal, his brute strength, his magic, and that noble bloodline hitting him all at once, until admiration and frustration tangled into straight-up awe. Liner replayed his harsh words again and again, stunned that they hit so hard, like somehow they were meant for him. Even while rage simmered, Liner admitted it didn't plant resentment. He said Harold's discipline felt just like his mother's scolding. With a fierce vow, Liner clenched his fist and swore he'd beat Harold someday, and Colette couldn't help but quietly admire him. Colette slipped away to grab help, and Liner clocked the admiration she wouldn't dare say out loud, especially for Harold's brutal strength. Outside, Colette sank into deep thought, realizing Harold's strength was in a league all his own compared to the Liner's, but her loyalty never wavered. Later, back in town, Harold and Itsuki ran into the talkative Cody, who practically begged them to think about whether he should join the chivalric order. Itsuki froze when that cocky guy started bragging, but the moment he realized the man really was a legit knight, his nerves finally eased. Cody praised Harold's performance and admitted he'd watched the tournament himself, then pushed the recruitment straight into the chivalric order. He taunted Harold with a cocky grin, pulling up what he said at the tournament and poking at his pride and patience on purpose. Harold snapped coldly, flat out rejecting the title, Lord, and he ordered Cody to never call him that again. Cody shoved his anger aside with a laugh, kept pressing forward, and clocked Harold's strange situation and downright dangerous temper. Inside a noisy tavern, Cody pressed Harold for answers, clocking his motives from the start and making it clear he'd already seen through the whole plan. When Cody brought up the red-haired boy, Harold's glare snapped sharper, and a wave of rage barely stayed locked behind his teeth. Cody let out a soft laugh, clocking Harold's way too calm leniency toward the liner, and realizing there had to be some secret bond tying them together. As he watched, Cody realized Harold didn't just clash with Liner, he fought tooth and nail, nearly steering him toward victory when everyone else got crushed in an instant. To Harold, it looked like Liner's power was being stretched on purpose, but the real reason stayed a mystery. Itsuki shot back, "You can't be eligible," because the chivalric order demanded 16 and Harold was just 13. Cody swore Harold was the exception, a rare talent worth recruiting, then flashed a grin so confident it practically dared the world to disagree. Once more, he pushed the idea that Harold should join the Order for Justice, firing words like a challenge that tested Harold's conviction and lit a fire under his ambition. Harold curled his lip with icy contempt, sneered at their ideals, then nodded along on the outside, while deception hid the real plan in his heart.